Chapter 869. Was this a toilet bowl? Or was he under an illusion? This was the question that popped up in Gu Xuanji's mind the moment he saw the toilet bowl. He cast the clarity spell on himself several times in a row. Purification spell. Hai was dead spiritual disco dance spell. 10 years gone sober spell. To confirm that he wasn't seeing things because he had been hit by an illusion spell. That was indeed a white and flawless modern toilet bowl. And the most frightening thing was that it gave off a frightening aura. Furthermore, this aura wasn't the slightest bit weaker than that of the cosmic god tree. In fact, before Lord Ma had been summoned here, Wang Ling had already enlightened him a second time. Lord Ma, who had now been summoned, was already the most powerful of all the enlightened gremlins in the Wang family's small villa. Second only to Lord Ma was Book of Sage Immortal Epade. But Book of Sage Immortal wasn't a gremlin who had been enlightened a second time. It was only because it had been enlightened later that it had a technical advantage. Wang Ling's ability to enlighten gremlins was also growing every day. The later the gremlins were enlightened, the more powerful they were. In fact, the ability to enlighten could also be superimposed. For example, he could enlighten them a second time. Gremlins who could be enlightened a second time were those who had gained Wang Ling's utmost trust. It could be said that Lord Ma had done a lot of hard work in the Wang family's small villa. Not only had he been responsible for several teleportation missions, he had also currently become an ambassador for the human world and the demon world in order to achieve good communication. If an envoy from the demon world wanted to come to the human world, they had to report to Lord Ma. After presenting demon saints' consent, Lord Ma would specially build a portal. Apart from that, in daily life, Lord Ma also suffered a lot. In order to deal with Father Wang's habit of sitting on the toilet bowl for a long time, Mother Wang had Wang Ming invent the variable temperature toilet, so Father Wang would sometimes sneak into Wang Ling's room to use the toilet. Currently, Lord Ma was the only one who had seen the buttocks of all the men in the Wang family. It was very touching. Hence, Lord Ma had a very high place in Wang Ling's heart. He had thought it over and over again for a long time before asking Lord Ma to come out this time. He thought for a while. Of all his battle strength that could communicate with the spirit, Lord Ma was probably the only one who was worthy of the cosmic god tree. Admittedly, Little Silver and Dog too could also be telepathically summoned, but it was clear that their combat strength was a little lower than that of the cosmic god tree. And now, after being enlightened for the second time, Lord Ma's strength had just reached the standard, which was no small matter. Thus, while he was deep in thought, Lord Ma transformed into his human form. In his human form, Lord Ma was an old man dressed in a white robe with a rather ancient charm. He looked like a scholar and had a scholarly air about him. He was completely different from the sh*t, piss, and fart that everyone had in mind. In fact, this image was also related to the expectations of all living beings towards toilets. If one's own toilet could take on a human form, what would it look like? Ever since the toilet was invented, how many famous scholars were suddenly inspired while squatting on the toilet? They completed one research after another that allowed human culture and scientific research to take another step forward. This was the ladder that allowed humanity to progress. How many innocent young men, in the middle of the night, threw the tissue wrapped in their offspring into the toilet bowl? This was humanity's reflection on reproduction. As a ladder for human progress and a reflection on reproduction, it could be said that Lord Ma's appearance played a decisive role. Every time he thought of this, even Wang Ling himself was moved beyond words. But it was clear that Gu Xuanji didn't understand this action. "You'll pay for underestimating me." Gu Xuanji took a deep breath. His eyes darkened, and he swiftly manipulated the cosmic god tree. As his hands made flower-like hand seals, Gu Xuanji only said 4 words. "Tree world descend." In an instant, the tree branches that were originally densely packed in the heavenly Tao space suddenly moved in unison. They started to spread out in Wang Ling and Lord Ma's direction like earth dragons rising from the ground. "My lord, be careful." Anxious to protect his master, Lord Ma swiftly made a hand seal and threw a cube at Wang Ling. Original world, water tank detachment spell. This was a spell that had been transformed from the water tank of the toilet bowl. At that moment, in Lord Ma's hands, it abruptly turned into a silver-white cubic dome that firmly enveloped Wang Ling. The spreading golden branches were firmly blocked outside, and couldn't advance another step. It was just a short exchange, but the 6 great heavenly Tao felt a deep stab of pain, because now they finally realized a problem. They seemed to have realized that even a toilet bowl was stronger than them. How could it be cultivated? Lord Ma didn't use any flashy moves. He was completely using the power he had gained after being enlightened to fight. It wasn't that easy for the cosmic god tree's golden branches to catch Lord Ma. It was only at that moment that Gu Xuanji noticed how powerful Lord Ma was. The cosmic god tree's golden branches were about to catch Lord Ma several times, but Lord Ma didn't even budge. His body actually turned invisible in front of everyone, and those golden branches couldn't catch him at all. The power of space, Gu Xuanji could tell. This Lord Ma was proficient in the art of space, and had also mastered the ability to layer space. When faced with a threat, part of his body or all of it could escape into other layers of space, and when the threat was over, he could release his real body again. Gu Xuanji smiled slightly. This was indeed a very powerful ability. But in Gu Xuanji's eyes, the spatial layering spell wasn't a precious spell at all. His chains of order could even penetrate the 3 universes. A mere spatial layering spell was completely subdued by his chains of order. Thus, Gu Xuanji quickly thought of a countermeasure. He once again summoned the chains of order, which pierced through Lord Ma's spatial layering, and used them as a bridge to connect the 2 spaces together. Moreover, the connected space was no longer separated from the inside and the outside. Just like that, Lord Ma's spatial layering spell was cracked. The next moment, the golden branches also firmly grabbed Lord Ma's shoulder. Not good. Lord Ma knew things weren't looking good. Was he going to lose? No, he could still struggle a little. In fact, he still had an ultimate big move against the cosmic god tree that he hadn't released yet. Even if he lost, he was going to lose standing up. If he lost without using a big move, that would be too aggrieving. So Lord Ma took a deep breath and opened his mouth wide. The next moment, an endless suction force was generated, and actually formed a storm in the space. With the sound of the toilet flushing, Gu Xuanji finally realized that this Lord Ma's ultimate big move was actually the spatial swallowing spell. At first, Lord Ma hadn't wanted to use this move, because it was a move with a smell. When the spatial swallowing spell was used, the space passage would be reconnected, and the smell of the filth that had been swallowed in the past would be transmitted directly through his mouth in the other space. Childish. Gu Xuanji laughed again. You want to fight the cosmic god tree with just this level of suction? The cosmic god tree has been at the center of the universe for 1,000 years, and is already used to any spatial fluctuations. In the end, as soon as Gu Xuanji finished speaking, smelling the familiar scent, the cosmic god tree actually stopped restraining Lord Ma at that moment. Indeed, the cosmic god tree hadn't been swallowed by the vortex created by the spatial swallowing spell, but the cosmic god tree. The moment Lord Ma opened his mouth and smelled the familiar scent, it was suddenly hungry, and so, in the next second, the cosmic god tree extended its branch and crawled into Lord Ma's mouth. Wang Ling 1. Chapter 870. Gu Xuanji had lost. He knelt on the ground, looking a little dazed. He had completely lost this battle. The cosmic god tree was already his ultimate trump card. As the most powerful psychic object in his possession, Gu Xuanji never thought that in the end, he wouldn't even be able to deal with a mere toilet bowl spirit. He had completely lost to the youngster in front of him. No matter how you looked at it, the other party had beaten him by too much. Wang Ling walked up to Gu Xuanji and patted him on the shoulder. To be honest, Wang Ling also hadn't expected the cosmic god tree to be drawn away by Lord Ma. He had already been holding back by summoning Lord Ma, because even though Lord Ma had been enlightened a second time, its overall battle strength was still inferior to the cosmic god tree's. In the end, it had turned out to be such an unexpected outcome. But Wang Ling had to admit that Gu Xuanji had already done very well. To be able to force his serious clone to this point definitely wasn't something an ordinary person could do. It could only be said that as expected of the Keeper of Order recognized by the 3 universes. It's really amazing. But on second thought, Wang Ling felt that it wasn't a good thing to push Gu Xuanji too hard, As a keeper of order who maintained the order of the universe, he definitely couldn't be pressured. Wang Ling was worried that this defeat would be a big blow to Gu Xuanji. So after seeing Gu Xuanji's dazed expression, he decided to give him a little reward to comfort him. After all, Gu Xuanji wasn't a bad person. He was the strongest keeper of order in the 10 universes. Maintaining order in the universe required hard work even if it wasn't meritorious service. At that moment, Gu Xuanji knelt on the ground with his hands on the ground, his face full of unhappiness. He had thought that this battle would at least end in a draw, and never thought that he would actually lose so miserably. When the youth's well-defined fingers pressed on his shoulder, Gu Xuanji felt as if his entire soul had been shaken. At that moment, Wang Ling saw that Gu Xuanji's eyes were a little excited. Then the latter firmly grasped Wang Ling's hand, his eyes full of curiosity. "Can you tell me, why are you so strong?" Wang Ling stared at Gu Xuanji with a silent expression on his face. If only he knew why he was so strong, that would be great. Unfortunately, even he himself didn't know why he was so strong. Even the fact that he had mastered the 10 universes and 30,000 great Daos was something he had only found out yesterday. Gu Xuanji was very tired. And so was Wang Ling, gazing into the sky. He saw that the dome of the heavenly Dao space was a vast sea of stars. He heaved a deep sigh, then turned around and directly disappeared. But before he disappeared, he left behind a reward for Gu Xuanji. This was a packet of enchanted crispy noodle snacks. He was worried that he would regret taking it back, so the moment he left the crispy noodle snacks, he immediately left. Gu Xuanji picked up the crispy noodle snack on the ground with both hands, and observed it for a long time, lost in deep thought. At that moment, after Wang Ling left, the 6 great heavenly Dao also surrounded him. Strength heavenly Dao. "Young friend Gu, we have a presumptuous request." Gu Xuanji looked up. Strength heavenly Dao. "Can you give us the noodles in your hands?" Gu Xuanji understood that the face the senior had left for him was not ordinary. To be able to make even the heavenly Dao fight over it. The truth was that the heavenly Dao had a lot of crispy noodle snacks, but the one in Gu Xuanji's hands was the only one they wanted no matter what. Because the noodles in their hands weren't ordinary, but expired. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the enchanted version in Gu Xuanji's hands. Gu Xuanji. "I'm very sorry, this is something senior gave me. I don't intend to sell it." The 6 great heavenly Dao sighed. This was the answer they had expected, and they couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. Strength heavenly Dao. "Then can young friend Gu fulfill our other request?" Gu Xuanji. Strength heavenly Dao said seriously. "I want to lick young friend Gu's hand. Your hand touched His Excellency Ling's just now, right?" Gu Xuanji was frightened. He immediately fled the heavenly Dao space with the crispy noodle snacks. He never thought that the 6 great heavenly Dao of the 7th universe would actually be such a bunch of idiots. Strength heavenly Dao. "Young friend Gu, don't go. I beg you. Let me lick. No. Just a sniff." Time heavenly Dao. "AI. Don't be reserved at a time like this. We should have pushed him down together just now, then directly lick him and be done with it." Death heavenly Dao. "Next time don't talk nonsense. Just do it." On the way back he also ate the crispy noodle snacks in his hand, and so from then on, in this universe, there was another man who was infatuated with crispy noodle snacks. After this man returned to his own time, he was punished by his own father for secretly eating the crispy noodle snacks on the offering table. Meanwhile, Lord Ma and the Cosmic God Tree's game of tag was still going on. The Cosmic God Tree had turned into a human form, and was running happily in Lord Ma's world. She was an imaginable tree spirit girl who was full of the divinity of the universe. She wore a golden coat and golden hair. And even her long hair was adorned with dark golden leaves, which looked very pretty. But it was precisely this beautiful young lady who was currently running wildly in Lord Ma's world. Her feet were stepping on the golden. Perhaps for many people, this was very disgusting. But for the Cosmic God Tree, it was rare fertilizer. Lord Ma transformed his spiritual consciousness into the inner world, and talked to the Cosmic God Tree. "Miss, please leave. This isn't the place for you." Miss Yu stretched out a branch and sucked up the rich fertilizer on the ground. "I haven't eaten so much in a long time. This place of yours is simply heaven. Only a fool would go out. Miss, this filthy place is just like your identity as a cosmic god tree. Lord Ma advised earnestly. TK, I don't care about being some divine tree. People have to live and so do trees. I'm helping you clean up the filth. You should be thanking me. As she said that, Miss Yu stuck out her branch again and stuck it deep into the ground. Lord Ma blushed. When had he ever been so deeply penetrated? Even his words were trembling. Miss Yu, you don't. He had never had such a beautiful girl suck him dry of nutrients. But this Miss Yu didn't listen to his advice at all. The cosmic god tree's branch took root deep in Lord Ma's inner world and sucked in big mouthfuls of nutrients. You. Lord Ma clenched his teeth. You men are all pig trotters. You should be very comfortable, right? No. I can't. Miss Yu, stop. Miss Yu sucked in a few more mouthfuls, then let out a satisfied burp. The color of her golden branch became even brighter. Baidu search 881 Chinese network yen. No advertising words. Chapter 871. Lord Ma wanted to cry but had no tears. As a toilet, he had conscientiously guarded the built-in toilet in Wang Ling's bedroom for so many years. Although he had seen the buttocks of all the men in the Wang family, he had never been so deeply violated. But this Miss Yu was clearly unaware of this problem. She happily wandered around Lord Ma's inner world, grinning from ear to ear. The branches that extended out from behind her sucked up the nutrients under her feet in large gulps, as if she was walking on a golden beach of delicacies. Miss Yu, really, stop messing around. Lord Ma couldn't take it anymore. His legs felt like jelly, and he almost couldn't stand. He could only blame this Miss Yu's suction force for being too strong. He had been a toilet for so many years and sucked in countless things. Lord Ma didn't think he was a match for her in terms of suction force. But when he bumped into this Miss Yu today, he realized that he was still too young. It could only be said that Miss Yu was Miss Yu in the end. As a tree spirit derived from the cosmic god tree of Universe 7, from the moment it had been watered as a small sapling, Miss Yu had used her powerful ability to absorb nutrients to grow to this stage. It was no wonder that this Miss Yu was the most well-developed cosmic god tree among the 10 universes. When the cosmic god trees of other universes had just produced a door and sword, this Miss Yu of Universe 7 had already successfully produced a set of 6 godly equipment. The cosmic god tree ran in front and Lord Ma chased after it. When Lord Ma was so weak that he couldn't run anymore, Miss Yu finally stopped and firmly grasped Lord Ma's hand. You're a toilet and I'm a tree spirit. We're a match made in heaven. Lord Ma was startled. There was actually a connection between the two. I don't care. Ever since I started following Gu Xuanji, he hasn't fed me enough once. Although the quality of the fertilizer in your space is uneven, at least the quantity wins. Miss Yu praised. Lord Ma, however, wasn't happy at all. Speaking of Gu Xuanji, Lord Ma was suddenly a little curious. If I may be so bold, Miss Yu, why did you choose to be with this Mr. Gu back then? Miss Yu smiled a little shyly. So many people peed on me, and they directly treated me as a public toilet. Later, I realized that Gu Xuanji's fertilizer was exceptionally good, so I decided to follow him. But it took him a month to excrete, which really made me anxious. Lord Ma. Cultivators with high realms could control their metabolism, and a cosmic keeper like Gu Xuanji would often forget to go to the toilet because he was too busy. But for some reason, Lord Ma could hear a hint of coquettishness in Miss Yu's words. Miss Yu. If you don't mind, can I also sign a contract with you? Lord Ma was shocked. You and me? I'm just an enlightened monster. Miss Yu bit her finger. What does that have to do with me? I only know that you're a master who can feed me until I'm full. Moreover, this space of yours has an endless stream of excrement, which saves me the trouble of looking for food everywhere. Lord Ma took a deep breath. Miss Yu, you mustn't. If you want to sign a contract with me, you have to terminate it first, right? Miss Yu said. If you want to terminate the contract, then so be it. What's the big deal? Lord Ma broke out in a cold sweat. He could only quickly come up with an excuse. That's even worse. If my master blames me, I'll return to my original form. Miss Yu, you might not be able to find me in this lifetime. Miss Yu sighed. Your master is really strict. But it should be fine to ask your master to make an exception, right? What is your master like? I'll go give him a gift. Lord Ma's crispy noodle snacks. That's easy. After saying that, Miss Yu's gaze started to wander around under her feet. Lord Ma. What are you looking for, Miss Yu? There's no crispy noodle snacks in poop. Who said that? Miss Yu then picked up a pile of poop. Look, this pile of poop is transformed from crispy noodle snacks. Other people can't tell, but I can see it with one glance. These things are filthy in your eyes, but in my eyes, they're what they looked like before they became poop. Lord Ma turned pale with shock. What kind of damn ability was this? After saying that, Miss Yu started to point out other poop. Look, that big pile is transformed from spicy hot pot. And that pile looks very fresh, it's transformed from fruit salad. And that's braised chicken and rice, overlord macaron, 6-layer beef burger, whole lamb, steamed bear's paw, whole reed, roasted flour duck, roasted goose, saucy pig, saucy duck, saucy chicken, saucy pork belly. Lord Ma. It was Saturday, August 19th. It was the 6th day of the summer vacation. A very familiar patient came to Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. This person was none other than Li Diao. Since the last time he had been forced to eat crispy noodle snacks, Wang Ling had enchanted a bacterium in passing. Li Diao's diarrhea hadn't stopped, and his body was about to collapse. His son Li Hao had already been kicked out of school, and he had received a tip-off that the school board was planning to deport them to the Vampire Management Center in Lixio Nation. Thus Li Diao took Li Hao and fled Songhai City that very night, and thought of a way to get to Chrysanthemum Island. When Immortal Toya saw Li Diao, he was extremely haggard and didn't look like a teenager at all. He looked like a zombie. On the side, the muscular Li Hao dropped to his knees with a thud. Immortal, I beg you, save my father. We have nowhere else to go now. We can only come to you. Immortal Toya initially didn't want to get involved in this trivial matter. After all, this was someone Ling Jinren had blacklisted. But a doctor had a benevolent heart. Looking at Li Diao's painful and miserable diarrhea, Immortal Toya couldn't bring himself to do it. If he didn't do anything, Li Diao might very well die from diarrhea. Is your father still having diarrhea? Immortal Toya asked. He's wearing an anal plug now, but it's actually very uncomfortable. As his son Li Hao replied, Li Diao already couldn't speak at all. Even when they were on the island, Li Hao had to carry him on his back. I might not be able to cure your father, but I might be able to alleviate some of his pain. Immortal Toya stared deeply at Li Diao and sighed. Li Hao lowered his head. I'm very sorry about the school. Immortal Toya looked at Li Hao. It seems you still don't understand. The reason why you and your father ended up like this has nothing to do with the school at all. After saying that, Immortal Toya wrote 3 letters in the air and said, Carry your father on your back, then comprehend it yourself. Li Hao stared at these 3 English letters with a stupefied expression. G. C. M. What did that mean? Aisheng Mobile Reading Address. Chapter 872. Li Hao knew that they had come looking for Immortal Toya because they really were at the end of the line, and had nowhere else to go. Immortal Toya was famous in the circle for being a good person. Although he had made it clear on the public platform that he wanted to cut ties with DG High School, the only person Li Hao could think of who could help them in the end was Immortal Toya. Li Hao's heart was naturally filled with regret. He would never have thought that his cheap mouth on Tiaba back then would actually cause him and his father to fall into such a predicament overnight. Li Hao had initially thought that the worst-case scenario would be for them to return home to Lixio Nation. However, he never expected that the other board members of DG High School would actually abandon them as chess pieces in order to preserve the last bit of DG High School's reputation. They were now wanted by Lixio Nation's Vampire Management Association. As soon as they landed, they would immediately be put under the control of the association. In the truest sense, they couldn't return home. GCM. Carrying his father on his back, Li Hao pondered what on earth these 3 letters meant. Immortal Toya had given them this hint when they were at the end of the line. This definitely wasn't nonsense. Perhaps this was the only way to save him and his father. But Li Hao still didn't understand what these 3 English letters meant. Li Hao followed Immortal Toya all the way to the island. At that moment, Li Diao's unusually distressed voice suddenly rang out. Li Hao. Li Hao turned his face slightly. What's wrong, father? I can't take it anymore. Li Diao's voice was unusually pained. In order to prevent continuous diarrhea, he had plugged his anus and held it in until now, and couldn't take it anymore. Father. We're almost there. Bear with it a little longer. Cold sweat trickled down Li Hao's face as he quickened his pace. But in the next moment, Immortal Toya heard a loud rumble. When he turned his head, he saw Li Hao, who was carrying Li Diao on his back, actually take off on the spot and fly forward as if he was carrying a rocket propeller. F***K me. Immortal Toya couldn't help swearing at this scene, and he hurriedly flew into the air to avoid it. But under the effect of this powerful propelling force, Li Hao continued to advance triumphantly. Finally, he charged all the way to the horizon. By the time Li Hao and his son landed on the ground, half an hour had already passed. Jin Shi and Yin Shi wore masks and cleaned up the filth on the island with purification talismans. During this period, Immortal Toya had also found an emergency plan for Li Diao that could temporarily relieve his pain. Immortal means. Li Hao looked at Immortal Toya's diagnosis report. In fact, he couldn't understand the words on the diagnosis report at all, because it was really too illegible. It was much better than the medical diagnoses written by the doctors in the hospital. Moreover, it was even more sloppy. If the hospital doctor's handwriting could be said to be sloppy, then Immortal Toya's handwriting was basically a mosaic of a sweater. Oh right, it's not like I don't understand it at all. Li Hao saw a string of numbers, 365 million. But it wasn't that he didn't know what it meant. At this time, Jin Shi suddenly said, if you don't understand, then just say it. If you don't say it, who knows if you don't understand? Li Hao. Then Jin Shi took off his gloves and directly took the diagnosis report, translating it for Li Hao. Lord Shifu writes very clearly. Fight poison with poison, do you understand? Later, Shifu will write a prescription for your father based on this diagnosis. It's a powerful laxative, but it has the ability to clean the intestines and purify toxins. Shifu's diagnosis is that your father's condition is caused by an intestinal bacterial infection. Fight poison with poison. Li Hao was blank. Currently, this is the only way to save your father. Jin Shi said. But it's also risky. Your father might have diarrhea and die on the toilet. The mortality rate is about 28%. You have to understand. Apart from this method, there's currently no other way to save your father. The bacteria in your father's intestines are a kind of super bacteria, which is quite powerful. After taking the diagnosis report back from Jin Shi, Li Hao fell into a long silence. This was a very difficult choice. But Li Hao was also well aware that there was currently no one who could help them except Immortal Toya. I believe in Immortal's medical skills, I'll sign. In the end, Li Hao signed. Jin Shi nodded. He couldn't tell that Li Hao was a filial son, and then he took out a pose machine from his storage ring. The medical fee is 356 million yuan. Li Hao was shocked when he swiped his card. It's really expensive. Isn't it written in the diagnosis report? You should be able to read numbers, right? Said Jin Shi. Li Hao. So that was what that string of numbers meant. But the problem was that Li Hao and his father didn't have that much money at all to come up with more than 350 million yuan. They would have to sell off several of their properties in Lixiu Nation before they could just barely make up that amount. I only have 50 million yuan in pocket money right now. Can I pay part of it first, and the rest in installments? Li Hao said weakly. Sure, it's more important to save a life. We're not demons. Everyone has their own difficulties, it's understandable. Jin Shi said in a very experienced manner. On the side, Immortal Toya was already stupefied. He felt that since Jin Shi had entered the city the last time, Jin Shi's sales ability had simply skyrocketed. After paying, Jin Shi and Yin Shi started to prepare the medicine according to their Shifu Immortal Toya's prescription. At that moment, Li Hao supported his father as he followed Immortal Toya to the island's toilet. This was Immortal Toya's own toilet, which he generally didn't let outsiders use. However, he hadn't expected Li Diao's diarrhea to be so serious, so he could only open up his own toilet. That was because an ordinary toilet clearly couldn't withstand Li Diao's impact. And Immortal Toya's own toilet. This was actually something that Wang Ling had personally enlightened. This was Lord Ma too. But it was different from the real Lord Ma. Lord Ma too didn't have its own intelligence. It was just more sturdy than an ordinary toilet. Furthermore, Lord Ma too's internal space was connected to Lord Ma. At the same time, the real Lord Ma, who was still negotiating with Miss Yu of the Cosmic God Tree, saw at that moment that a black hole had suddenly appeared in the internal space, and countless fresh goods poured out. Miss Yu. This person should be a vampire, right? Lord Ma was startled. This you can tell? Miss Yu pointed at the pile of fresh goods. Type A, Type B, Type AB, and Type O Lord Ma. At that moment, Miss Yu suddenly cried out in alarm. Oh no. Lord Ma. What's wrong? Miss Yu. This person. I'm afraid he's been infected. There's poison in his poop. Chapter 873. Lord Ma realized that this author had been a bit out of his mind recently. He had finally made an appearance, but in the end, all the plots related to him were related to shit or poisonous shit. As a very principled toilet, even if Lord Ma thought he had a lot of complicated feelings toward butts, he deeply believed that his life as a horse shouldn't be like this. At that moment, Miss Yu had an extremely complicated expression in her eyes. The new lump of goods that had just fallen made her very uneasy. Lord Ma, do you have a way to get rid of these things? They're very bad. Miss Yu, what do you mean? Lord Ma stared at this lump of new goods. Apart from the fact that it was a little black and sticky, it was no different from the other old goods of various shapes and sizes. After all, in this space, there were all sorts of strange shapes and sizes. Some were long, some were sticky. In fact, it's not the thing itself that's bad, but what's inside it. You need a certain level of ocular power to see it. As she spoke, Miss Yu's golden centipede shone with an incredibly bright light. I'm sure that there's something wrong with it. Is that so? Lord Ma also used his ocular power, and his pupils emitted a dark brown light. It was different from Miss Yu's Eye of the Universe, which was an ability unique to the Cosmic God Tree. It sounded like a very domineering name, but in fact had a lot to do with the power of nature, so Centipede's ranking probably wasn't that high. On the other hand, Lord Ma's centipede was called the Eye of No Beginning. This name was a homonym of a certain word, and Lord Ma had forcibly changed it to sound more high-end. Lord Ma's centipede had the ability to purify. When Miss Yu mentioned that there was something wrong with the new lump of goods, Lord Ma used his centipede to scan it. Sure enough, he found that there were some strange red strips in the new goods. They were wriggling like worms. It should be bacteria. That's not right, can bacteria be so big? Lord Ma was startled. Lord Ma's space naturally also contains bacteria, but these bacteria are abnormal and clearly different. They have to be purified quickly. Lord Ma. Miss Yu realized the seriousness of the problem. These bacteria are fighting with me for food. Lord Ma was taken aback. He immediately activated his Art of No Beginning. When the dark brown light shone on the bacteria, it could be seen that the bacteria were writhing in pain. Some of the bacteria were killed, but Lord Ma also discovered that his purification power couldn't solve the problem. This was because the bacteria were absorbing nutrients from the feces in his space, while reproducing at an incomparably fast speed. His purifying power couldn't outrun their reproduction speed. Most importantly, Lord Ma noticed that the bacteria seemed to be getting bigger and bigger. This was no longer bacteria. Lord Ma did not want to admit it. How could bacteria grow to the size of a crab stick? Moreover, the latter's body was still growing with the nourishment. Lord Ma began to panic and broke out in a cold sweat. Miss Yu, what should we do? This was out of Lord Ma's expectations. He didn't expect such a dangerous thing to fall into his space. However, Lord Ma was very clear about the origin of this dangerous bacteria. The source of all this was that bacteria which his little master had casually enchanted back then. But perhaps even little Master Ling himself hadn't expected that the enchanted bacteria would actually start to reproduce faster in Li Diao's body, and he would even expel some of them. Miss Yu frowned. We have to move space. We have to destroy this thing completely. It's too dangerous. Miss Yu stretched out her branches and joined in the firefighting operation. Lord Ma. Miss Yu, what do you think? Miss Yu. I'm going to use my spatial power to move this thing into outer space. In space, this thing will be frozen very quickly. I can kill it once and for all. Lord Ma breathed nervously and was a little nervous. There was no doubt that Miss Yu was stronger than him. Furthermore, Miss Yu indeed had her own unique technique for manipulating the power of space. But the question was, would things really go so smoothly? This was a super bacteria that had been enchanted. Furthermore, Lord Ma realized that among all the gremlins that little Master Ling had enchanted, this was the only gremlin that could actually reproduce and upgrade on its own. Lord Ma was utterly shocked. At that moment, Miss Yu opened up the space again. She used the branches as a bridge for the bacteria to climb onto her body, and finally connected the other end of the branches to outer space. Miss Yu, it's fine. These bacteria have infected my branches, so I can cut them off at any time. I won't feel any pain. Miss Yu's expression was very serious. Lord Ma was moved by Miss Yu's spirit. Even the legend of Buddha cutting off his own flesh to feed eagles couldn't compare to this. In order to exterminate this terrible bacteria, Miss Yu was actually willing to sacrifice her own body. What kind of fearless spirit was this? Lord Ma realized that he was actually a little teary-eyed. He felt that he might have misunderstood this unreasonable girl. Or perhaps he was a little prejudiced against her. It seemed that the other party hadn't just gone deep into his inner space to eat and drink. She had indeed helped him a lot. Like maggots, the red bacteria crawled onto the branches of the cosmic god tree. Miss Yu waited patiently, seizing the opportunity to confirm that all the bacteria had climbed onto her body. She sent them into outer space, and then directly cut off the entire branch. After successfully sending the bacteria into space, Miss Yu and Lord Ma breathed a sigh of relief. Lord Ma was overjoyed. Thank you, Miss Yu. You're welcome. Miss Yu clapped her hands. If these bacteria stay here, they'll easily damage other food and ruin my appetite for delicious food. Lord Ma. Saying this, Miss Yu waved her hand and opened the space mirror. She was checking to see if the abnormal bacteria she had just sent out had frozen. However, what happened next was far beyond Miss Yu's expectations. The abnormal bacteria, which should have already been frozen, actually broke through the ice. The largest bacterium had already grown to the size of a baby, and even had limbs. Miss Yu turned pale with fright. It even swallowed the nutrients in my branches. Damned E. coli. In the space, the largest abnormal bacterium cackled coldly. Thank you for your guidance. I am the king of bacteria kings. You can also call me Lord Fungus. Lord Ma and Miss Yu had never expected that not only would this Lord Fungus grow its own limbs and gain sentience, it would even snatch away their spatial abilities. After leaving behind these words, Lord Fungus directly opened up a spatial hole and disappeared into it. Although he was an enlightened bacterium, he couldn't stay outside for a long time, and had to find a suitable host. Chapter 874. The enlightened E. coli had turned into Lord Fungus, and it had the terrifying ability to level up, devour, and reproduce. Lord Ma knew very well that the reason his Eye of No Beginning didn't work wasn't because of the Eye of No Beginning, but because the latter's reproduction ability was simply too powerful. This Lord Fungus very cleverly made use of its reproductive characteristics, constantly multiplying small E. coli around its mother's body to form a bacterial armor. It was like an orange that could never be completely peeled. You could never get rid of the flesh inside, and that was the most annoying part. What Lord Ma and Miss Yu hadn't expected was that Lord Fungus, who had originally planned to rely on the feces in the internal space to evolve, would instead rapidly evolve and obtain spatial abilities after climbing Miss Yu's branch into space. This time, they were really in trouble. Even Miss Yu was at a loss. Is it too late to use hand sanitizer now? Lord Ma broke out in a cold sweat. This Miss Yu was eating in his personal space, Yet she was still thinking about washing her hands. She really was a good girl who loved cleanliness. You're eating with your hands, so why the hell are you talking about washing your hands? Miss you, can you sense where Lord Fungus is going? In the internal space, Lord Ma used his Eye of No Beginning to observe the various spaces. This was the Eye of No Beginning's second ability, spatial insight. However, this kind of spatial insight had its limits. Lord Ma could only see places with toilets. In this world, every place with a toilet bowl was like an eye stone to Lord Ma. Lord Ma could use the toilets scattered all over the world as an eye stone to observe. However, the observation range of each toilet bowl was limited, only 5 meters away. Even if there were many of them, he couldn't actually see much. Moreover, many spaces were dark because many people were using the toilets. If Lord Ma wanted to see the surrounding space, he would have to wait until those people's butts left. There was no way to get a good look. I'm contacting my friends from the Tree Clan to monitor together. Miss Yu said. Miss Yu blamed herself for allowing Lord Fungus to grow. She was also partly responsible for this. When dealing with that E. coli, she had been too idealistic. She hadn't thought about the problems that would arise later on. She should have just ignited her branch and burned the other party along with it. Even bacteria were afraid of high temperatures. But it was too late to say anything now. Lord Ma and Miss Yu were both using their spatial abilities to search for the escaped Lord Fungus. Compared to the limitations of Lord Ma's spatial abilities, Miss Yu's ability to sense her tree tribe companions and search together couldn't be more convenient. But what Lord Ma and Miss Yu didn't know was that Lord Fungus was a very, very cunning person. He went to a place without trees. At that moment, Li Diao was occupying the only VIP toilet on Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. In order to train Jin Shi's and Yin Shi's leg muscles, as well as to develop good toilet habits, Immortal Toya had installed squat toilets for his 2 disciples. Furthermore, they were equipped with an IFI signal blocker, and there wasn't even an internet connection inside. Since Lord Ma couldn't observe through the occupied toilet bowl, and since Chrysanthemum Island was full of bright chrysanthemums, and there wasn't a single tree, it provided Lord Fungus with the perfect opportunity to commit the crime. Lord Fungus was afraid of light and fire, but the chrysanthemums on the island were lush, and the shadow of the sky gave it enough space to move around. The reason why it chose to come to Chrysanthemum Island was because the host it wanted was on this island. That was right, that host wasn't just anyone. It was the island master of Chrysanthemum Island, Immortal Toya. As a pharmacist, Immortal Toya had practiced medicine for 1,000 years and tasted all kinds of herbs. He was now the only descendant of the Toya clan. As a bacterium, under normal circumstances, it absolutely wouldn't look for an experienced pharmacist as a host, especially when the host was highly resistant to poison. It wasn't easy for it to enter the host's body and combine with it. But the situation was different now. It was the new Lord Fungus, and was probably the most powerfully coli in the universe at present. If it successfully combined with Immortal Toya, it would be able to develop an extremely strong resistance to drugs, and might even be able to develop an immortal ability. Lord Fungus had already decided to give itself a new Taoist name. If this parasitic host operation was successful, it would infect the world and spread it all over the sky. If it didn't come back, it wouldn't come back. Devil Gut Fungus Lord. It had already thought of a Taoist name for itself. Next, it was time to act. While Li Diao was still receiving emergency treatment, Immortal Toya heard the alarm from the chrysanthemum array on the island. Someone had invaded. But who on earth was it? Immortal Toya frowned. Shifu, do you want me to go take a look? Jin Shi asked obediently. Take care of Mr. Li, I'll go take a look. Once Mr. Li's intestines are cleared, follow the previous plan and have him drink the medicine. After that, he'll have diarrhea for 3 days and 3 nights. As long as he can endure it, he'll recover, Immortal Toya replied. Yes, Shifu. Then Immortal Toya went outside. He stared in the direction of the chrysanthemum array's alarm and frowned. The truth was that he had a very bad feeling. And it was precisely because of this feeling that Immortal Toya had tactfully declined Jin Shi and Yin Shi's invitation to go take a look. Senior Immortal, it seems that my island has been invaded. If I don't reply in 15 minutes, please send someone to take a look. To be on the safe side, Immortal Toya sent Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a text message before he went to take a look. Then he went deep into the chrysanthemum array. The array under his feet was a top-secret design by his ancestors, and 99% of people who entered it would be lost and lost. With each step he took, the chrysanthemums on the side would constantly shift and change their paths, which had the effect of a dazzling flower. These chrysanthemums had all been specially custom-made, and each one was a full 2 meters tall. Furthermore, the chrysanthemum array had a flight restriction, so it wouldn't be easy to fly over it. Before entering the array, Immortal Toya looked up at the blue sky. The other party hadn't invaded through the air. Thus, he could only go deep into the array and look for the intruder through the location of the alarm. But what Immortal Toya didn't expect was that the intruder wasn't human. It was an enlightened bacterium whose aura couldn't even be sensed. While Immortal Toya was inspecting the array, danger was quietly closing in on him from behind. Chapter 875. Sunday, August 20th. It was the 7th day of the summer vacation. For Wang Ling, summer vacation was supposed to be a leisurely and peaceful one. He didn't have to get up early to go to school, and he didn't even have to do his summer homework himself. It seemed that the only thing he had to do was slack off as he watched a silly TV series on the TV with a pack of Ice Crispy noodle snacks. But his imagined summer vacation wasn't peaceful at all. It had been a long time since Wang Ling had had an ominous dream. The last time he had had one, he had dreamed that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was in danger. But this time he dreamed of Immortal Toya. Unlike the last time he had dreamed of Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, however, Immortal Toya wasn't lying in a pool of blood. Immortal Toya was clearly still alive, but his temperament was completely different. Furthermore, in the dream, Immortal Toya actually abused Jinshi and Inshi. For Immortal Toya, Jinshi and Inshi were like his sons and daughters. Although Immortal Toya had always been very strict with Jinshi and Inshi when it came to alchemy, he would never commit this kind of domestic violence. In his dream, Wang Ling saw that Jinshi and Inshi's eyes were swollen like pandas. This definitely wasn't the work of that scheming woman from Sun Island who had deliberately put on makeup to prove that she had been beaten up by her boyfriend. Wang Ling was ready to go to the island to take a look. But before he set off, he realized that he had missed several missed calls on his wristwatch. All of them were from Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Unlike an ordinary dream, a foreboding dream couldn't be easily interrupted. That was to say, he would enter a state where no one could wake him up until the end of the foreboding dream. It seemed that something had really happened. Wang Ling frowned and quickly sent Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal a message. Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't been able to reach Wang Ling on the phone earlier, and hadn't dared disturb him directly, so he had been waiting in front of his phone. In the end, when he saw Wang Ling's ellipsis, he instantly became excited. Brother Ling, something might have happened to Brother Tu. I was planning to visit his island, and I was a little worried about Jinshi and Inshi. He texted me a few hours ago, but I was at the broccoli farm at the time and didn't notice it right away. In order to better cultivate the heavenly Dao broccoli, Brother Ling knows that there's no signal on our farm to eliminate all radiation. Wang Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been very busy recently with the heavenly Dao broccoli. Ever since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had eaten the heavenly Dao broccoli in front of everyone at the opening ceremony, and become a true venerated, the Office of Strategic Deception's heavenly Dao broccoli orders had completely exploded. Currently, all the heavenly Dao broccoli on the breeding farms had been booked out, and there was even a long queue for later orders. Currently, the latest order was already 50 years in the future. Moreover, the time for this order was still increasing. It could be said that the supply could not meet the demand. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal then sent a location. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was currently moving the coordinates. He was still a little far from Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island. It was a pity that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't brought Wuxia with him. Otherwise he would have been able to reach Chrysanthemum Island in an instant with Wuxia's ability to travel through space. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could also use his own strength to open up a space. but he could only move it over a small area. That was because in the end Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't a cultivator who specialized in space. Wang Ling had done some research before, and found that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was a cultivator with a metal spirit root. This type of cultivator was more resilient, and had extremely powerful penetrating spells. They had a special effect on defensive spells that broke through defenses and resisted attacks. Since Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already on his way, Wang Ling felt that he didn't need to be in such a hurry to get there. Given Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's current realm, an average opponent wouldn't be able to shake him at all. What was more, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still had the soul suppression ring which Wang Ling had given him. He was a tanky MT warrior who could resurrect infinitely. But while Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's realm and strength had been secretly bestowed by Wang Ling, it wasn't enough to just give him realm without spells. Every famous person had their own signature spells. For example, the Old Devil's Chaos Ball. For example, General Yi's Palm Sword. Another example was the recently very popular Six Studies Bible, which was the signature spell of the famous performance artist Teacher Six. Wang Ling remembered that he had specially studied this spell, which allowed a cultivator to directly summon a heroic spirit in the morning hall. It was a pretty remarkable spell. In contrast, it seemed that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't have any more signature spells. If a suicidal spell could be considered a photo spell. But the problem was that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wasn't Cheyenne. Wang Ling dropped his forehead into his hand and pondered. He was going to give Grenade-throwing a spell that suited his metal spirit root. A few minutes later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, who was hurrying to Chrysanthemum Island on his sword, suddenly saw a space open up in front of him. Wang Ling took the initiative to stretch out his hand and hand him an exercise book. This was a special exercise book for students that all students used. It was light and convenient, and was mainly used for doing math homework. After Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened the exercise book, he was almost blinded by the glittering golden characters in it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stupefied. This exercise book actually contained a metal palm technique, called Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm. Brother Ling. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put the exercise book away and typed excitedly. This was the first time that Wang Ling had given him a spell, and he didn't know how to thank him in words. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal typed excitedly. Was this spell collected in an ancient book? I just made it up. Wang Ling replied simply. Just made it up. What version was this? What was the difference between this and a hardcover? When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw these 3 words, he was stunned for a moment. Then he sucked in a cold breath of air. He finally realized how perverted this spell was. Wang Ling had actually just made it up. Nowadays, could there still be people who could casually make up spells for fun? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had thought that his worldview had been shattered and rebuilt after he had seen Wang Ling spend a few minutes to refine more than 10 holy weapons. In the end, he couldn't help being shaken to the point of shattering once again when he saw this scene in front of him. But that wasn't the most terrifying thing. It was the learning instructions for this Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm. Because the entire exercise book was filled with golden runes that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't understand. The only thing he could understand were the words, Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm, on the first page, as well as the learning instructions below. The contents of the first page went like this. Title: Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm Instruction. Please swallow the exercise book, and you will automatically comprehend the spell. Chapter 876. Eating an exercise book would allow one to learn a grade 7 spell. No one else could have imagined this. In fact, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that it was really a pity to eat this exercise book. Because Wang Ling's handwriting was really too beautiful. This was the first time he had seen Wang Ling's writing. And it was an entire book at that. For people with OCD, the golden characters in this book were simply a blessing. Apart from the title, every character and every rune was the same size, and no matter how complicated the strokes were, they were all square characters. Anyone who got their hands on this kind of exercise book wouldn't be able to resist collecting it. Even if they just opened it and smelled the ink, they would feel like they were very, very close to the heavenly Tao. What a pity. Looking at this exercise book, grenade-throwing senior immortal sighed in his heart. He couldn't bring himself to do it, but he had to, because it was indeed as Wang Ling had thought. He currently didn't have a signature spell that he could use. Although he liked to court death in the past, in most situations he would fight if he could, and if he couldn't he would throw a skybomb grenade and run. This move, the Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm, could make up for the shortcomings of his moves. And so, as grenade-throwing senior immortal rode the brilliant victory sword to Chrysanthemum Island, in the end, grenade-throwing senior immortal clenched his teeth and started to tear up the pages of the exercise book before stuffing them into his mouth one by one. But what shocked grenade-throwing senior immortal the most was, Wang Ling had actually added flavor to this exercise book. What kind of freaking exercise book actually had flavor? And it was the black pepper flavor that grenade-throwing senior immortal was exceptionally familiar with. It looked like Brother Ling might have added a packet of crispy noodle snack seasoning powder to the rune ink. As grenade-throwing senior immortal chewed the pages of the exercise book, he smacked his lips. Unexpectedly, this exercise book tasted pretty good. Perhaps no one could imagine that a cultivator could easily learn a rank 7 spell while riding a sword, and that the speed of learning was so fast that it made one's hair stand on end. Even learning skill books in the game wasn't this convenient. And so, after grenade-throwing senior immortal ate the exercise book in its entirety, for a moment, a golden torrent of spirit energy accumulated in grenade-throwing senior immortal's 6 organs. He closed his eyes and discovered that a magnificent golden Buddhist palace had appeared in his dantian. Is this the power of the Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm? Grenade-throwing senior immortal was inexplicably shaken as he felt the power of this level 7 spell. He was still flying on his sword, but this terrifying aura had alarmed all the cultivators around him. No matter if they were driving in the air, riding on swords, or passing cultivators on the ground, they all rolled down their windows, stopped and slowed down. At the same time, they extended their spiritual senses in the direction where the aura was bursting. The passers-by were surprised to find that there was a golden meteor streaking across the sky. Someone rubbed his eyes. This was because they felt that this golden meteor was like a Buddha. At this moment, the situation on Chrysanthemum Island was completely under Devil Gut Fungus Lord's control. He never expected his physical compatibility with Immortal Toya to be so high, and the whole plan had been exceptionally smooth. As a bacterium, he didn't have an aura, which made his sneak attack plan exceptionally smooth. And now, after several hours of settling, he had completely merged with this body. Even the host's own soul had been completely suppressed by him. Jin Shi and Yin Shi, this pair of fellow brother and sister, were facing the biggest crisis Chrysanthemum Island had faced since its establishment. You two, go brew the medicine. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sternly berated Jin Shi and Yin Shi. One of Jin Shi's eyes had already turned into a panda's eye because he had tried to resist before, but to no avail. Furthermore, this Devil Gut Fungus Lord was using their beloved Shifu's body to threaten them. If they didn't obey, Devil Gut Fungus Lord would cut off Immortal Toya's flesh piece by piece. As a bacterium, he didn't feel any pain, and this pain would be directly inflicted on Immortal Toya's soul. Of course, the most miserable people on the island weren't Jin Shi and Yin Shi, because Devil Gut Fungus Lord still needed them to refine medicine for him. The most miserable people were Li Hao and his father. Li Diao's injuries hadn't healed yet, but he had already become Devil Gut Fungus Lord's test subject. Devil Gut Fungus Lord had Jin Shi and Yin Shi change their prescriptions, and had Li Hao and his father eat countless laxatives. What on earth is your purpose? At that moment, Li Hao and his father were squatting in the vegetable field in the back garden. Devil Gut Fungus Lord even went overboard and didn't let Li Hao go to the toilet. He wasn't even allowed to use the squat toilet, and the two of them had to do it directly in the vegetable field. Li Diao was already completely speechless. He had already been pooping for several days, and at that moment, he had already collapsed in the vegetable field and completely lost consciousness. The only organ that was still functioning was Li Diao's never-ending intestines. Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at the father and son and smiled slightly. Since I've already chosen to make my debut, I'm bound to cultivate loyal subordinates of my own. When a person has subordinates, they aren't reliable, and there are too many drawbacks. Due to various factors, you'll be disturbed in battle. and can't be considered qualified warriors. But bacteria warriors are different. We are a bunch of emotionless bacteria. Li Hao. I've already let the bacteria multiply in your stomachs, so you need to keep excreting in order to select qualified bacteria warriors. Speaking up to this point, Devil Gut Fungus Lord looked proudly at Li Hao and his father's masterpiece in front of him. There were already tens of thousands of qualified warriors in this vegetable field alone. Then, Devil Gut Fungus Lord produced a purple-black spirit energy and forcefully pushed it inside. The bacteria were actually activated by him and turned into eggshell-like things. Li Hao's trypophobia was about to flare up, because these eggshell-like things were trembling non-stop, as if something was about to hatch from inside. Elsewhere, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had already rushed to Chrysanthemum Island on the front line. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it at all that Chrysanthemum Island had actually become like this. At that moment, all the chrysanthemums on Chrysanthemum Island had withered. This was a very strong aura of the evil. Furthermore, it definitely wasn't one of these two species. Now that he was a true venerated, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was very sure about auras. It looked like the guy on this island wasn't simple. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was already ready for battle. For the time being, let's test the waters first, he said in his heart. In the next moment he raised his hand and slapped the island, and a golden Buddha seal appeared in his palm. Chapter 877. When the blazing golden light of Buddha lit up in the sky, Devil Gut Fungus Lord raised his head. He could already sense that an expert had come to visit. But he wasn't the slightest bit afraid, and just waved his hand to cover the newly produced bacteria on the ground in a purple-black barrier. This light of Buddha was so intense that it had the effect of sterilizing with ultraviolet light. He had to protect his newly produced subordinates. Is an expert here? To be honest, not only wasn't Devil Gut Fungus Lord afraid, he was even a little excited. That was because apart from relying on autonomous evolution, his strength relied more on devouring to obtain direct power. Just by devouring a branch of the cosmic god tree, he had grown a mouth, eyes, and limbs, and had also obtained the ability of space. If he could devour this expert as well, his strength would definitely soar again. But if it came down to it, Devil Gut Fungus Lord had to admit that this expert on the island wouldn't be easy to deal with. The other party's spell was simply his natural nemesis, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that water and fire were incompatible. Furthermore, devouring it was extremely difficult. It was like holding a hot potato in one's mouth. The slightest carelessness could lead to mutual destruction. Devouring was certainly good, but what Devil Gut Fungus Lord wanted to do now was to hold his ground. Gazing at the light of Buddha in the sky, he finally raised his hand and tore open the space above to block the light of Buddha with a spatial crack. At the same time, his body also started to separate. He separated a fist-sized chunk of flesh from his mother's body, and turned it into a bug that burrowed into the ground. It wasn't until he was done that Devil Gut Fungus Lord breathed a sigh of relief. Next was a head-on battle. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had used less than 20% of his strength for the first Wutian Golden Buddha Palm. After all, this was a grade 7 spell, which was as destructive as a small-scale city-level spell. If he used too much strength, it was very likely that the entire Chrysanthemum Island would be smashed to smithereens. Now that Jin Shi and Yin Shi were still on the island, he had to hold back a little before he could save them. And the most important thing was that so far, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal still didn't know who on earth had invaded Chrysanthemum Island. Watch out. At that moment, the brilliant victory sword under his feet emitted sword chi to help Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal avoid a pitch-black laser beam. This was Devil Gut Fungus Lord's ability, Super Bacteria Wave, which had an extremely long range. That was close. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a cold sweat. He had been paying attention to the enemy's aura on the island, but he hadn't expected the enemy to actually be someone with no aura at all. So much so that he hadn't anticipated the other party's sneak attack. If it wasn't for the protection of the brilliant martial sword Spirit, he would have been hit by this dangerous attack. Brilliant Victory's sword spirit had been awakened by Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal after he had advanced to true venerated. Brilliant Victory had an extremely strong defense to begin with, and this sword spirit was extremely protective of its master. But so far, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had never seen Brilliant Victory's sword spirit. Victorious Marshal was a sword spirit that was impregnable, had powerful defensive abilities, and was very homebody. What evil spirit? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal opened his palm, and the light of Buddha grew brighter. Devil Gut Fungus Lord felt very uncomfortable under the light of Buddha's light, and it was already useless for him to tear open space to block it. Thus, he extracted new bacteria from the bacterial spores that were still multiplying at the bottom, and turned them into a barrier in front of him. These bacteria died the instant the light of Buddha shone on them, but at the same time, the bacteria below continued to multiply, which actually formed a kind of balance. Brother 2, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's appearance also made Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal aware of what was happening on Chrysanthemum Island. Although he didn't know how Immortal Toya had been parasitized, he was sure that this evil spirit was inside Immortal Toya's body. A troublesome guy has come. Devil Gut Fungus Lord brushed off the dust on his body. This body is very compatible with me, and your friend and I share this body. How about we each take a step back? I promise I won't do anything to your friend. As long as I fully evolve and have the ability to shape my body, I'll let go of your friend. All three of us can live in harmony and live happily together in this world. Why should I make a deal with an evil spirit like you? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal gripped the Brilliant Victory Sword and pointed it at Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Since you chose to parasitize my friend, are you prepared to be punished by my venerable self? Your cultivation is indeed higher than mine, but it won't be that easy to punish me. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sneered. He controlled the constantly multiplying bacteria to gather on his back, and 8 purple-black arms actually sprouted out of bacteria. Then these 8 arms spread out together. At that moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord had 10 arms in total. 10 arms, 50 fingers. The next second, the laser beams of the super bacteria wave burst toward Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal like a barrage of bullets. The viscous super bacteria wave had an extremely high rate of fire and corrosive ability. Coupled with its super-wide attack range, it was now difficult for the Brilliant Victory Sword to block such a wide-range attack. Because of the super bacteria wave's uniqueness, it was best not to make direct contact with it. Even blocking it with a barrier would be self-damaging. Because the super bacteria wave had a sputtering ability, it would be bad if it spread through the barrier and onto a person. Given the current situation, there was already no other way. The only thing Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could think of was to use the Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm to deal with it. If the island was gone, Immortal Toya would definitely blame him, but it was better than letting these dangerous bacteria spread. Brilliant Victory. Take Jinshi and Inshi away. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal spread his arms wide, and stood in front of them. The Brilliant Victory Sword under his feet was wrapped in a golden Buddhist light as he charged toward Jinshi and Inshi, skewered the pair of brother and sister like skewers, and directly carried them off the island. At the same time, Immortal Toya put his palms together. How powerful was the Wuxian Golden Buddha Palm at 100% power? At that moment, the clashing Buddha light actually turned into another shockwave with a distinct color that blasted toward the super bacteria wave. Devil Gut Fungus Lord turned pale with shock, because he saw a huge virtual image of a golden Buddha appear behind Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal at the same time the palm struck. When the palm came, the Buddha statue also struck out. The super bacteria wave covered a wide area, but the moment it came into contact with the Buddha's light, it dissipated into nothingness. All of it was reduced to ashes, leaving not even a single fungus behind. Seeing that the attack was effective, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. It seems that you evil spirit don't understand the law of opposing waves in the cultivation world. Law of opposing waves? Devil Gut Fungus Lord was stunned. Opposing waves? Of course, whoever releases the light wave first loses. Chapter 878. Devil Gut Fungus Lord stepped back. The man in front of him was a little troublesome. He didn't know much about this human world, but Devil Gut Fungus Lord believed that given his strength, he could definitely rank in the top 10 in terms of fighting strength. But the superbacteria wave he had just unleashed had actually been easily dispelled by this man with long black hair and ancient clothing in front of him. The other party's strength was clearly on par with his, or even above his, thus, the only thing Devil Gut Fungus Lord could think of at the moment was to drag the fight out. His strength was based on the number of bacteria in his body. The more new bacteria he produced, the stronger he was. He would continue to grow as time went on. But could he drag things out as smoothly as he thought? That was still a problem. Can we call a truce for a while? Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Standing in the air, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal also met Devil Gut Fungus Lord's gaze with a fearless expression on his face. You and I both know very well that this is a fight that can be resolved in a minute, or even less. How many more waves of my palm techniques do you think you can withstand? Devil Gut Fungus Lord grit his teeth. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's words were spoken lightly, but they just happened to poke at his sore spot. Indeed, that palm technique, which had the golden light of Buddha and could even condense into a golden Buddha, was very unfriendly to him. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was a natural nemesis. The power of that palm just now had been unstoppable. It had instantly vaporized hundreds of millions of his bacteria and reduced them to cannon fodder. If Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had used a series of palm techniques, he wouldn't have been able to hold on for long. At that moment, Jin Shi and Yin Shi were already stupefied under the protection of their brilliant victory swords in the distance. They had never known that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could be so powerful. They had heard before that he was already a true venerated expert. Shifu had told them that this was a very rare realm between true immortal and venerated immortal. To advance to true venerated level required great luck. Shifu is being controlled by that evil spirit. Can Senior Immortal really save him? Inshur was a little worried. It wasn't that she didn't believe in Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ability, but that he was too powerful and would destroy their Shifu's body. After all, nowadays, there were often silly news reports about people deciding to kill young girls before they jumped off the building in order to save them. If Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's subordinates weren't careful, this evil invader might destroy their Shifu's body along with it. It was true that the evil spirits had invaded, but they had invaded their master's body. Although there were many ways to reconstruct one's physical body, it was still better to keep one's physical body original. He'll be fine. Your Shifu will also be saved. As Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's sword spirit, Victorious was very confident in its master. He had already activated his defensive sword shield. Sword chi extended from the hilt of his sword, forming a mountain-like sword wall that firmly protected Jin Shi and Yin Shi. The defensive ability of the brilliant victory sword was extremely strong, and it could even withstand a nuclear explosion. Considering the formidable power of the Wutian Golden Buddha palm, Sheng Wu felt that it was necessary to protect Jin Shi and Yin Shi in order to prevent them from getting hurt. This was the mission that Grenade-throwing had given him. As for Dio and his son, who were still on the island, Brilliant Victory Sword had initially wanted to save them in passing. But both of them were infected with bacteria, and their bodies stank to no end, which made Brilliant Victory Sword flinch at the sight of them. Brilliant Victory Sword could only let these two people pray for their own good luck. On the other side, seeing that Jin Shi and Yin Shi were already completely protected by Brilliant Victory Sword, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal no longer had any misgivings. As for Dio and his son on the island, they could only pray for their own good luck. Once the battle was over, he would see if he could save them. After all, these two were people whom Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch had singled out to kill, so their priority was definitely far behind Jin Shi and Yin Shi's. It's all over. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal stared at Devil Gut Fungus Lord. You wouldn't dare kill me. Devil Gut Fungus Lord laughed savagely. This is your friend's body. If you do anything to me, your friend's body will be the first to suffer. Devil Gut Fungus Lord didn't know the human world very well, but he knew that the price of reconstructing a body was now more expensive than a house. Is that so? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled gently. He made another hand seal, and blazing Buddhist light soared into the sky like a miracle with the effect of splitting heaven and earth apart. The golden pillar of light that connected the earth and the sky was like a stabilizing needle, full of deterrence. Behind Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, the huge illusory golden Buddha appeared once more, and it slowly waved its palm, which seemed to contain countless truths of Buddhism. The golden Buddha palm pushed the pillar of light in front of it, which was directly aimed at Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Buddhist light immobilization. Under this enormous pressure, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was astonished to find that he couldn't move. This person was too vicious. Did he not even care about his brother's body? Devil Gut Fungus Lord never expected Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to actually be so decisive. He was utterly shocked, and at the same time sensed the threat of death in his heart. This Wutian golden Buddha palm had the Buddhist pillar immobilization effect. When the palm fell, his soul, his body, and the soul of the owner of this body would instantly be annihilated. If he didn't leave now, it would be too late. Devil Gut Fungus Lord grit his teeth in hatred. You win. In the next moment, countless purple-black worms gushed out of Immortal Toya's pores. This was Devil Gut Fungus Lord's split body, and these worms were made up of the parent bacteria which had been enlightened by Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had forced him to leave this highly compatible body. At the same time, the moment he left the body, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was bathed in the light of Buddha, and suffered excruciating torture. Damn it, it hurt. He felt like his whole body was on fire. The power of the Buddhist light was so strong that it felt like every inch of his body was being gnawed at by a powerful purifying force. In the next second, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's split body directly gnawed out a space, and he controlled all the split bodies to plunge into the space. He was worried that if he stayed too long, even his parent body would be immobilized by the Buddhist light, so he had retreated in time. Seeing that he had successfully forced Devil Gut Fungus Lord out of his body, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly roared at the sky. Brother Ling, I know you're watching. Come and help me break my big move. Don't just stand around and watch. My palm will strike down. Brother 2 and Brother 2's island will be gone. As soon as he said that, a space fisher suddenly appeared next to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's cheek. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw a pair of familiar hands. Crack. Then, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt his head hurt. With Wang Ling's great skull-flicking spell, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's big move was successfully interrupted. The golden Buddhist light that filled the sky instantly dissipated. Chapter 879. The Great Skull-Flicking Technique was one of the 3,000 Great Daos that could forcefully interrupt all skills. Even heavenly Dao techniques could be interrupted by this technique. If there was a situation where he couldn't stop it, it could only mean that the other party's strength far surpassed his, or that his skull-flicking art was not proficient enough. But with Wang Ling, neither of these two situations would happen. It was just that when he had flicked the skull, he hadn't paid attention to his strength, and seemed to have used a little more force. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's ultimate move had indeed been interrupted, and his head had been sent flying by Wang Ling. It was only when Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal relied on the power of the soul suppression ring to reconstruct his body, that he realized he had already died. Fortunately, the power of the soul suppression ring had resurrected him. Brother Ling, sure enough, you're still strong. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was secretly shocked. He didn't even feel anything when he died. He didn't feel any pain at all. When a person was strong to a certain extent, they would be able to do this. A few seconds later, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's body was swiftly reconstructed. His body had already been restored. Jin Shi and Yin Shi saw that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's severed head had actually turned into a sand-like substance, and returned to his head. This pair of siblings didn't know what words to use to express their feelings at this moment. They couldn't help but open their mouths wide. See, didn't I say that my master could save your master? Shengwu didn't notice Jin Shi and Yin Shi's astonishment at all. He thought that the two of them were still immersed in the joy of their master's rescue. Shengwu sighed inwardly. In the end, he was still a junior. His mental endurance was not good enough. After his resurrection, the first thing Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal did was to check on Immortal Toya's injuries. He had brought with him a panacea that could quickly recover from injuries, the stretching leg and staring eye pill. The main ingredient in this pill was the extract of heavenly Dao broccoli. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had eaten it himself before, and it had a powerful miraculous effect on recovering from injuries, especially internal injuries. But Immortal Toya was unconscious and couldn't swallow at all. If Wang Ling blew in with artificial respiration, it would seem a little gay. Furthermore, Jin Shi and Yin Shi were also here. It wouldn't be good to affect their image in front of the children. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought hard. There was no other way. Tugging off Immortal Toya's clothes, he directly put the pill in Immortal Toya's belly button, and then pressed it in. A few seconds later, Immortal Toya woke up smoothly. The invasion of the evil spirit had caused great damage to his soul, but the stretching legs and staring eyes pill had a miraculous effect, and the damage to his soul was also healed. Brother 2? Are you alright? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal helped Immortal Toya up. It's alright. Immortal Toya shook his head. The last scene in his memory stopped at the moment when the huge golden Buddha palm pushed the Buddhist pillar, and was about to crush him. In that instant, he felt the fear of the evil spirit in his body. Then, the evil spirit slipped away as if it had gone mad. His soul returned to the path of dominating the body. After that, he lost consciousness. When his soul returned to his body, he lost consciousness for a split second. Fortunately, after waking up, Immortal Toya didn't feel any discomfort, except that his clothes had been torn. It's all destroyed. Sitting on the ground, Immortal Toya sighed. Whether it was the heavenly silkworm treasure robe he was wearing or Chrysanthemum Island, they were all destroyed. His Chrysanthemum Island, such a big island, and so many chrysanthemums on the island, in an instant, he was out of luck. It'll take a lot of time to rebuild it. Immortal Toya sighed. The chrysanthemum array on the island was a legacy left behind by his ancestors, and had to be restored. He didn't want to be nailed to the shame of later generations and be called a wastrel. Brother 2, don't worry, I'll send someone over to help rebuild it. With Dharmaraja and Brother Luo around, Brother Dharmaraja's logistics team will be ready at any time. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hadn't expected Chrysanthemum Island to be destroyed to this extent. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that Chrysanthemum Island had been plunged into an abyss of misery, as if it had been invaded by pain. Smoke and chaos reeked everywhere. They could only blame Devil Gut Fungus Lord for being too contagious. But Immortal Toya and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal were well aware. It wasn't over yet. Because Devil Gut Fungus Lord wasn't dead, and was still at large. Immortal Toya stood up and looked at the mess on Chrysanthemum Island, his body trembling a little. It wasn't because his Taoist robe was in tatters or cold, but because he was angry. Senior Immortal, if it's possible. Brother 2, I might have saved you, but the person who really saved you was Brother Ling. You don't have to repay me with your body. Senior Immortal, I'm serious. Fine, tell me. I want revenge. Can you give this Devil Gut Fungus Lord to me? This Devil Gut Fungus Lord is extremely strong and cunning. Given Brother 2's current battle strength, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with him. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. I know. Immortal Toya nodded very seriously. But I still want to do it. As he spoke, Immortal Toya opened his palm, which shone with spirit light. In his palm, a beautiful redbud flower appeared. Then the redbud flower bloomed, and an exquisite pagoda appeared. However, the pagoda had already shattered. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that this was the ancestral treasure of Immortal Toya's clan. The 9 Cycles Exquisite Pagoda. Brother 2, you want to repair the exquisite pagoda? That's right, I think the time has come, Immortal Toya said. The pagoda contains my Immortal Toya clan's internal secrets. These secrets will be a key factor in improving my technique in the future. Unfortunately, the pagoda was already broken long ago. I've been looking for the materials to repair it, and I only managed to collect all of them not long ago. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. So Brother 2, you've been collecting materials all this time? He had heard before that the 9 Cycles Exquisite Pagoda had been broken, but Immortal Toya had never mentioned it, so he had thought that the pagoda had already been damaged beyond repair. Immortal Toya nodded. That's right. I've been looking for materials all this time. I've been working hard all these years to save money and buy the materials to repair the pagoda. Wait, Brother 2, Grenade-throwing senior immortal interrupted Immortal Toya. Have you asked Brother Ling? I was just about to ask. I heard that Ling Jinren's refining skills are very brilliant. To be on the safe side, I'm already prepared to get down on both knees and beg Ling Jinren to help me repair the pagoda. After all, there's only one set of materials. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. Why don't you ask him now? Immortal Toya, now. Grenade-throwing senior immortal shouted into the air. Brother Ling, I know you're looking. As soon as he said this, a space fissure opened up, and he stretched out his hand again. He just stroked Immortal Toya's exquisite pagoda. All the cracks on the exquisite pagoda disappeared. Immortal Toya. Grenade-throwing senior immortal. You see, Brother To doesn't need the materials at all. Immortal Toya was startled. This? Grenade-throwing senior immortal. So Brother To, in the future, you should tell me earlier if you need anything. If you don't, how can you be a koi? Immortal Toya. Chapter 880. Everyone had their own little secrets, and Wang Ling was no exception. Furthermore, he had the habit of writing them down in his diary. This could be considered one of the major characteristics of the Wang family. The old man, Father Wang, Mother Wang, even Loopy Toad, who had just started, had the habit of taking notes. It was true that Loopy Toad had started out writing in the diary to practice its writing, but in the end it had become a habit. The works of the Wang clan could be forged into a legend. These words were not just empty words. This was a fact that had been verified by history. When Wang Ling was writing in his diary that day, he accidentally flipped to his birthday last year. That day's experience was very magical. December 26, 4395. At that time, Wang Ling and Grenade-throwing senior immortal, and the others hadn't been as close as they were now. The sexualists hadn't been born yet. The septualists had controlled the world. The koi fish hadn't been born yet. The immortal king hadn't been animated. Calories hadn't been so popular. Chongdong hadn't been caught. The most beautiful Yuquan hadn't had its wings broken. And the spring breeze of reform hadn't been a hit yet. When the Heavenly Emperor token had awakened, he had looked at the Heavenly Tao Almanac, and on that day, everything had happened because of that almanac. Cultivation calendar 4395 December 26 good for weddings and funerals, going out, making friends, studying, working. Don't. Snacks. Wang Ling looked down at the crispy noodles in his hand. Although crispy noodles hadn't opened the package yet, his hands were already trembling slightly. This Heavenly Tao calendar should be set by the Heavenly Tao, right? No. He wanted to modify it. I can't live without snacks on my birthday. But at that time his relationship with the six great Heavenly Tao hadn't been that close. Using the crispy noodle snacks in his hand, he drew a refinement array and summoned the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man. The Little Golden Man's hands were also trembling. What do you want now? Wang Ling pointed at the almanac, his meaning very clear. The Heavenly Law Ecliptic Calendar. This was decided by yesterday's Heavenly Law Ecliptic Adjudication Assembly. The true decision isn't made by the six great Heavenly Taos, but by the 3,000 Heavenly Taos that comprise the six great Heavenly Taos. Everyone has to vote. I didn't cross out the snacks section. You can't blame me. The Little Golden Man wiped his cold sweat. He knew very well how the little master in front of him looked when she was angry, so he didn't dare to provoke her. Take me back to yesterday. Wang Ling's eyes were fixed on the Little Golden Man as he spoke telepathically. The Little Golden Man opened his mouth. He didn't have the right to refuse the deal at all. He had wanted to ask what Wang Ling was prepared to offer in exchange, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he noticed the crispy noodle snacks in his hand, and his heart instantly froze. As he had expected, this crispy noodle snacks had expired. After a long sigh, the Heavenly Tao Little Golden Man opened the time tunnel leading to yesterday. Without even thinking about it, Wang Ling directly stepped inside. Unlike the Heavenly Tao Governing Committee, the Heavenly Tao Calendar Ruling Assembly was held in a large stadium. When Wang Ling arrived at the entrance of the stadium, he saw many little golden men collecting voting machines at the entrance. When the conference officially began, the voting machines would become an important factor in the almanac. This is the voting machine. Please hold it properly. The golden man's staff in the venue handed the machine to every golden man who entered the venue. It was Wang Ling's turn. This is the voting machine, please. The little golden man looked up. Just as he was about to hand over the voting machine, he realized that it was actually a human. That's not right. How could a human be here? On the side, the little golden man who had brought Wang Ling in hurriedly gave the machine giver a look and said in a low voice, "If you don't want to die, hurry up and give him the machine." Unfortunately, this little golden man was very inflexible. No way. The only ones who can use machines are us heavenly Tao little golden men. This human absolutely can't use them. He can't even enter the stadium. As soon as he said this, Wang Ling directly stretched out his hand and lightly tapped the little golden man's forehead. Boom. A small mushroom cloud exploded. The little golden man who had given away the voting machine was reduced to flying ash. The golden man who had led the way sighed. "AI, this bro. Why did he have to do this? The heavenly Tao wouldn't die." But this little golden man hadn't even been turned to ash by this little mushroom bomb just now. It would probably take a long time for him to recover. Then, Wang Ling took away all the remaining voting machines. The little golden men who were still in line were stupefied, but they didn't dare say anything, and so 10 minutes later, a miraculous scene played out in the venue of the Heavenly Tao Calendar Adjudication General Assembly. A human teenager split into hundreds of clones, each of whom held a voting machine, and were waiting to vote. On the other side, the little golden men whose voting machines had been snatched away huddled together and shivered. After the venue quieted down, the platform in the center of the venue slowly rose, and the 6 great heavenly Tao who were in charge of the meeting arrived. When the 6 great heavenly Tao saw that a human who had snatched away a voting machine was actually sitting in the venue, they were already prepared to suppress him. But when they saw the teenager's face clearly, they withdrew their restless hands. Similarly, they were furious, but didn't dare say anything. Strength Heavenly Tao cleared his throat. "Colleagues, today we will be holding the Heavenly Tao Calendar Adjudication General Assembly as per usual. Based on the discussion at the meeting, we will vote on the appropriate and taboo items for tomorrow, December 26th. After saying that, Strength Heavenly Tao looked at Wang Ling and said in a trembling voice, "Next, I will discuss the taboo items for tomorrow. Last night, I observed the celestial phenomena and noticed that the great Emperor Star of Ziwei Star Palace lit up, which is a sign that the soul of a great man is shining. So I especially suggest that we ban an entertainment activity tomorrow. Which one do you think should be banned? Playing games, reading comics, binge-watching dramas, or eating snacks? Please be careful, and vote." Strength Heavenly Tao felt that his hint was already quite obvious. But he didn't think the voting this time would go smoothly, because the Heavenly Tao little golden men's pursuit of appetite could almost be described as non-existent to begin with. Thus, Strength Heavenly Tao already had a bad feeling when it came to voting. Strength Heavenly Tao? "Brother Time, can you adjust the time? I'll take away the snacking item." Time Heavenly Tao. "It's too late. Brother Strength, you're too late." Strength Heavenly Tao. As soon as Time Heavenly Tao said that, a series of explosions rang out throughout the venue. For a moment, countless mushroom bombs rose into the air. A few seconds later, only Wang Ling was left in the huge venue, and Wang Ling's clone. The 6 great heavenly Tao looked at the mushroom clouds rising all over the venue. They were furious, but didn't dare say anything. Chapter 881. Immortal Toya sniffed, feeling a little hopeless. He had worked for so many years, but in the end, a problem that could have been solved with a few packets of crispy noodle snacks had become so troublesome. Not only was it harmful to the body, but it also greatly slowed down the speed of his cultivation. Staring at this flawless and repaired 9 cycles exquisite pagoda in front of him, Immortal Toya's thoughts were a mix of emotions at that moment. It could only be said that Ling Jinren was truly Ling Jinren. Even such a magic tool could be repaired in an instant. This was simply not something that a normal human could do. Even the 10 generals and General Yi couldn't do this. The 9 Revolutions Exquisite Pagoda was a world-defying magical artifact. To be able to instantly repair world-defying magical artifacts, this was too terrifying. On the other side, Wang Ling, who was in his bedroom, withdrew his hand. Of course, he didn't know how to repair the Dharma artifact. That move just now was just a directional time reversal technique that allowed the 9 reincarnation exquisite pagoda to return to its original state. It wasn't a complete repair. However, the Book of Time Rewind had its limitations. After activating it once, the cooldown time for the second activation was very long. He had once thought of using this method to fix crispy noodle snacks. For example, if he left behind some crispy noodle crumbs, he could use this trick to restore the crispy noodle he had already eaten. However, he had waited for too long, so he could only give up. Of course, he had been more mischievous as a child, and had used this trick as a prank once. That time, Father Wang had deducted his pocket money because Wang Ling had broken his chopsticks, so he had used the time reversal spell to delete all the manuscripts in Father Wang's manuscript storage box. Later that month, because Father Wang hadn't submitted his manuscript, his royalties were extremely low. Wang Ling's pocket money had shrunk again. Although Wang Ling was capable, the Wang family's income came from legitimate work, and most of the family's expenses were supported by Father Wang's royalties. Little Wang Ling didn't know if Father Wang had realized at that time that he had done it. Now that he thought about it carefully, perhaps Father Wang had already discovered it at that time. But after that incident, little Wang Ling, who was only a few years old, understood how difficult it was for his father. From then on, he would never do such a naughty thing again. The pace of life in the Wang family was very slow, and even Father and Mother Wang took things step by step with their children's education. When it came to educating their children, Father and Mother Wang never advocated using violence to solve problems. Domestic violence is useless. In fact, the main reason was that they couldn't beat him. Even if it was a brawl between husband and wife, Wang Ling's physique was too strong, and if the reaction force was too strong, they might hurt themselves instead. So whenever he made a mistake as a child, Father and Mother Wang's most common punishment was to make him stand against the wall, deduct his pocket money, ban him from eating crispy noodle snacks, and so on. Standing against the wall as a punishment was good for the growth of the lumbar spine and leg muscles. And Wang Ling's sage body had in fact come from standing as a punishment. In front of his desk, Wang Ling's thoughts suddenly drifted back to his childhood. To be honest, if it hadn't been for Father and Mother Wang's proper guidance from a young age, even Wang Ling himself didn't know what kind of person he would have become. Too much power would often bestow a person with an extreme personality, and the slightest bit of ill intent would cause a person to fall into the abyss. But the good thing was that, although he occasionally had his troubles growing up, he had still been very happy overall. Immortal Toya had used his time reversal spell to repair the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda. But in fact, this was also his compensation, because he had already secretly spied on the battle between Devil Gut Fungus Lord and Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal just now. He hadn't expected the germ he had enlightened to actually run amok. This matter could be considered as his own fault. Thus, after repairing the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda, Wang Ling had been thinking about a plan to get rid of the germs. The germ he had enlightened this time was a little troublesome, because the gremlins he had enlightened in the past didn't have the ability to grow. Not only could this Devil Gut Fungus Lord grow, it could also devour other people's abilities for its own use. For gremlins that could grow, there was no way to cancel the enlightening mechanism to resolve the crisis this time. What Wang Ling needed to do was completely destroy this Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Help me track its location. Wang Ling spoke telepathically to Book of Sage Immortal on the table. Yes, my lord. Book of Sage Immortal's screen showed traces of a radar scan as it searched for Devil Gut Fungus Lord's location. Although Devil Gut Fungus Lord had devoured the Cosmic God Tree's spatial ability and learned to travel through space, unfortunately, he didn't have the ability to leap out of the universe. As long as Devil Gut Fungus Lord was still in Universe 7, Book of Sage Immortal just needed to rely on its radar search ability to quickly determine his specific location. Found, my lord. Dozens of seconds later, Book of Sage Immortal sent a message. According to its location, Devil Gut Fungus Lord has already fled abroad, and is currently active in the outskirts of Mishio Nation. Fled abroad? Wang Ling's heart trembled. It looks like my wise lord is already thinking about how to eliminate devil gut fungus lord, right? I've already thought of 1,000 ways, and I've already analyzed 3 of them, which are definitely what my lord is thinking now. Book of Sage Immortal said, Devil gut fungus lord is active in the outskirts of Mishio Nation. According to my analysis, there's a 78% chance that he'll run into President Bai of Night Chief. When the 2 of them meet, Devil Gut Fungus Lord has a 97% chance of winning. Although Devil Gut Fungus Lord's strength will be greatly enhanced after devouring President Bai, it won't be a threat to my lord at all. Instead, it will help my lord completely eliminate this hidden danger, President Bai. When the time comes, my lord can dispatch a clone to directly eliminate him, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Wang Ling. The second method is a simple and crude one. My lord can directly open up a space to suppress them, but the hidden danger is that there's a high chance that my lord will be noticed by Mishio's secret agents. A lot of people in Mishio are already paying attention to Night Chief, and the FCI is currently investigating. If we ignore Night Chief, there's a 67% chance that they'll be successfully eliminated by the FCI in the future, and a 34% chance that President Bai will die. If my lord directly suppresses them, there's a 1,000% chance that Night Chief will be eliminated, a 2,000% chance that President Bai will die, and a 3,000% chance that Devil Gut Fungus Lord will die, but there's also a 47% chance that FCI will notice them. Wang Ling. The third method is to get someone else to do the dirty work. My lord can dispatch your friend, Immortal Toya, to go abroad and suppress them. With the complete 9 cycles exquisite pagoda, there's a 72% chance that Immortal Toya will be able to eliminate Night Chief, a 68% chance that President Bai will die, and a 54% chance that Devil Gut Fungus Lord will die. The main thing is that with a little help from my lord, you can raise the probability to 100% or even higher. Book of Sage Immortal. Looking at my lord's calm expression, I presume my lord has already made a decision? I'm guessing that my lord is definitely thinking of the third method, right? Wang Ling. Genius 1 second remember website URL. Mobile version M. Chapter 882. For the first time, Wang Ling realized that the gremlin he had enlightened was very dangerous. As the only gremlin in the Wang family's small villa who had been enlightened by the 2nd generation enlightening spell, Book of Sage Immortal's formidable power was already on full display. Although Lord Ma was still the strongest gremlin in terms of combat ability, Book of Sage Immortal's other abilities were truly astonishing. If it was enlightened a second time like Lord Ma, it might become a cosmic divine weapon. Wang Ling lowered his head as he pondered. He felt that Book of Sage Immortal's ability might be able to benefit the universe. Calculating probabilities was still a little heaven-defying. My lord, Wang Ling. ? Wang Ling had a bold idea. He wanted to send Book of Sage Immortal to another universe. This guy was really too smart. Keeping it by his side might be a huge problem. Seeing that Wang Ling hadn't responded for a long time, Book of Sage Immortal asked again, My lord, what are you thinking about? Before Wang Ling could speak, Book of Sage Immortal continued, I know that your lordship is still thinking about Devil Gut Fungus Lord, and I just calculated that there's an 87% chance that your lordship will choose the third option. Thus, I've already contacted Immortal Toya in advance and sent him a text message in your lordship's tone to have him deal with Devil Gut Fungus Lord. Wang Ling. Book of Sage Immortal. I calculated that there's a 92% chance that a giant tornado will form on the sea tomorrow, which will affect the flight schedule, so I've already helped Immortal Toya buy tickets for the underwater passage. We'll set off this evening and arrive in 2 hours. Because of space restrictions in Mishio Nation, if my lord casually opens a space tunnel to send Immortal Toya over, I'm afraid it will affect relations between the 2 nations. Also, I bought the tickets for the underwater passage after pawning my lord's crispy noodle snacks. So far, I've already calculated that there's a 99% chance that my lord will smash me. Of course, there's also a 1% chance that I'll be sent to another universe to benefit humans there. But my lord, please stay calm. Because I can already sense that your anger has penetrated the dimension wall and is affecting the world's environment. Wang Ling's heart. A few seconds later, "My lord, calm down. I can already sense that your anger is on the verge of erupting. Furthermore, it seems that it has already overflowed the dimension wall and is flowing into another universe." A few seconds later, Wang Ling's heart. For all, my lord, you really shouldn't be impulsive. I know that there is a 99% chance that you want to hit me, but if you get angry, the dimensional wall of Universe 10 will break even more. Currently, Universe 10 has already been affected by my lord's anger, and the 4 poles have begun to leak. If we use Bushu Bao, the Earth cultivators of Universe 10 will barely be able to hold on for another 30 years before they completely disappear. At that moment, Wang Ling took a deep breath. He had already decided. He was going to send this guy to the 10th universe. On the other side, on Chrysanthemum Island, Immortal Toya had already received a message from Book of Sage Immortal disguised as Wang Ling. As an iPad, Book of Sage Immortal could connect to any electronic device in the world and send messages to it. Immortal Toya was very excited. This was his first time going abroad on a mission, and he was well aware that Crispy Noodle's Tao Monarch was giving him a chance. "Congratulations, Brother Toya, you've been chosen." Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal congratulated him on the side. "The main reason your realm hasn't advanced for so long is because your mind hasn't calmed down." "What do you mean, Senior Immortal?" As an apothecary, his mind was steadier than that of a regular cultivator. That was because the process of refining medicine itself required a calm mind. If you were too hot-tempered, the success rate of refining elixirs would be greatly reduced. Hence, many apothecaries in the industry were rather easygoing. Brother Toya, don't misunderstand. Your mind naturally can't compare with that of a regular cultivator. But the more open your mind is, the more likely it is that someone will take advantage of it. Chrysanthemum Island has now been invaded and is in a state of devastation. Even if you don't show it, you definitely have resentment in your heart. Speaking up to this point, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sighed. So in a situation like this, it's usually very important to have a girlfriend. Immortal Toya. If Brother Toya had a girlfriend, you could have sex with her to vent your resentment. But now that you don't have one, only Brother Toya can personally resolve this issue, which is the only way to purify your mind. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Every cultivator who has reached a bottleneck will run into a problem in their mind. After all, Brother Toya isn't old Demon Wang. Brother Ling is helping Brother Toya out. What does this have to do with old Demon Wang? Brother Toya, have you forgotten? Back then, in order to purify his mind, old Demon Wang specially opened a wood carving shop to carve wooden airplane cups. It's hard for a regular cultivator to achieve that kind of perseverance and craftsmanship. Immortal Toya was silent for a long time at these words. After a moment, his eyes suddenly fell on Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's phone, and he took a deep breath. Senior Immortal, may I ask what this is? As Brother Toya can see, this is a dating app. Just click scan, and the app's radar will automatically activate to scan for female cultivators within a range of 500 li, who are most compatible with your interests and hobbies. But, Brother Toya, you and I aren't young anymore. You need to think about your future. It's good for you to have a permanent partner. With a partner, your success rate in refining elixirs in the future will also increase greatly. But, of course, it's too late for this incident. But you should always prepare for a rainy day, right? I've only just come into contact with this app. When Brother Toya comes back, I think I'll have more or less finished studying it. When the time comes, I can teach Brother Toya step by step and find a mother for Jinshur and Inshur. But, there are no buts, Brother Toya. This is a mission. It's also the first time the Office of Strategic Deception has assigned you a mission since its establishment. The organization is very concerned about your life. The Chrysanthemum Island incident this time. If Brother Ling hadn't taken action, I'm afraid Brother Toya's mind would have already collapsed. So shouldn't Brother Toya find a wife who can fry crispy noodle snacks to repay Brother Ling? But, another but? Why do I feel like Brother Toya is so nervous? I'm just doing my own research now, and I haven't figured it out yet. I understand, Senior Immortal. But, Immortal Toya took a deep breath. He had already been holding it in for a long time. If he didn't finish, he felt like he would die. In the next moment, before Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal could speak, he reached out to cover the latter's mouth. But, when Senior Immortal makes friends, can you not use my profile picture? Chapter 883. The Toya clan's 9 cycles exquisite pagoda contain the clan's secrets, and contain the clan's supreme and unique pill recipes. Only in the hands of the Toya clan would the value of this magic artifact be of great use. Holding the tower up, Immortal Toya dripped his blood essence onto the top of the tower, and a golden light instantly rushed out. What powerful fluctuations! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was secretly alarmed. I've already awakened the tower spirit. The tower spirit is currently awakening. The tower spirit can fuse with me and increase my battle power. Immortal Toya said. But only those with the bloodline of my Toya clan can awaken the pagoda spirit, which is a little troublesome. Generally, you need to use blood essence to create the eye at the top of the pagoda. It took me a long time to aim that drop of blood. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Dozens of seconds later, the ripples from the exquisite pagoda stopped. Immortal Toya and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal waited for a good while, but the Linglong pagoda actually didn't respond. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. What do you mean? Why isn't there any movement? Could it be that Brother Dong's shooting posture is incorrect? Impossible. I've been practicing this move for a very long time. His accuracy is extremely high, and there are almost no mistakes. Immortal Toya didn't dare believe it. He started to look up the Toya clan's ancient records, which contained information on the pagoda spirit. In the end, he was sure that it wasn't his problem. It shouldn't be my problem. What did Brother to say? My ancestor said that this tower spirit has a flaw in its personality. It's quite mischievous. Furthermore, he has a reverse personality. Immortal Toya said telepathically. Antisocial personality? It means that even if we wait for it to come out, it won't come out. The best way is to ignore it. After saying that, Immortal Toya and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal turned around and pretended to be indifferent. Sure enough, the exquisite pagoda emitted another fluctuation. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal broke out in a sweat. This pagoda spirit is a little interesting, Brother too. But come to think of it, how are you going to control it? Immortal Toya sighed. At this moment, his entire body was trembling. His heart was resisting. But in order to improve his combat strength, he had no other choice. Immortal Toya turned his head and tore off his clothes to reveal the expression of a young girl who had been roughed up by several burly men, and he pinched his throat. Ah, Yamit. Yamit. No, don't possess me. As soon as he finished speaking, the 9-rotation exquisite pagoda trembled slightly. Then, an indistinct figure appeared at the top of the pagoda. When he came back to his senses, the figure had already materialized. It was a girl dressed in azure clothes. The girl was tall and slender, with a small face and red lips. Her breasts and buttocks were plentiful. The moment she materialized, she instantly turned into a beam of light and merged into Immortal Toya's body. Immortal Toya felt the changes in his body in disbelief. He felt that he was indeed much stronger than before. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Elsewhere, on the border of Mishio Nation, Night Chief was still active. After the failure of the operation against the Office of Strategic Deception, Night Chief's reputation in the dark network had suffered a huge blow, and for the first time, President Bai felt that being a boss wasn't easy. To prop up Night Chief, strength wasn't the only thing he needed to rely on. But President Bai wasn't in a hurry. He was still working on a new plan, the Night Chief National Fitness Program. It was also known as the National Fitness Program for short. In this plan, President Bai decided to target middle-aged and elderly members around the world to help Night Chief raise a huge sum of money for the next big operation. Thus, after the Office of Strategic Deception's opening ceremony, a clinic called Night Fitness Fire Therapy Center sprung up like bamboo shoots after a rain. The members of Night Chief started to lay out the Fire Therapy Center, which didn't require a lot of money. It really didn't have a lot of resources. A 10 square meter room, 2 fire therapy beds, and an unprofessional masseuse were enough. At that moment, Long Ming was reporting on the progress of the Fire Therapy Center. Lord President, the basic layout of Night Fitness Fire Therapy Center has already been completed. Currently, the 121 branches are doing well, and we've collected a lot of money. Our salesmen have already sold tens of thousands of fire therapy beds, raising close to 100 million yuan. Given this momentum, it won't be long before we have several billion in savings. Half a month at the soonest. That's right. President Bai nodded. I've already seen the tweets on the official account. They're very well written. But I think we can exaggerate the efficacy a little more. Long Ming sweated. If that's the case, it's very likely that Mishio Nation's Consumer Association will target us. When did my night chief start to be afraid of swindling people? In any case, we're just raising funds in the short term. Once we take the money, we'll run. President Bai smiled. Just do as I say. Long Ming sweated and didn't dare refute him at all. Thus, that night, Long Ming spent a lot of effort to hire hundreds of water armies to coordinate with the new tweets on the official account to promote the wonderful effects of the fire therapy beds. User 1, 18,000 likes. The cultivator downstairs is at the golden core stage. When he advanced to the nascent soul stage a while ago, his nascent soul ran outside his dantian. The doctor said that it was a pregnancy outside the dantian, and if it wasn't treated in time and allowed to continue, it was very likely that he would lose all his cultivation. My friend didn't believe it and stubbornly refused to believe the doctor, but look at the result. Because the nascent soul outside the dantian was exposed and absorbed too much smog, it directly died of pneumonia. It died in the womb, simply. When my friend went to see the doctor again, he said that it was already hopeless, and suggested that my friend remove the abandoned nascent soul. Otherwise even his life would be in danger. In the end, by chance, my friend came across the Night Fitness Fire Therapy Center. After 2 days of fire therapy, the nascent soul that was clearly dead actually came back to life on the spot, and it even crawled back into the dantian alive and kicking. User 2, 16,000 likes. Please support Night Fitness Fire Therapy. Oldly downstairs was born with a disability and couldn't feel his legs. When he was young, he was humiliated, and was so angry that he chopped off his legs. But look at the result. After using the fire therapy, not only did Oldly grow a new pair of legs, he also regained his senses. Even the legs in the middle have become thicker. User 3, 120,000 likes. The spring breeze of reform blows through the door, and Night Fitness Fire Therapy is full of vigor. A small fire therapy bed nourishes the kidneys and prolongs life, and healthcare is full of vigor. Guess what happened to my friend's spirit beast, Salted Fish King, after using the fire therapy bed? It directly evolved into a mega beast. The scene had already turned into a golden exploding carp ripping through space. This was simply a huge profit, not a loss at all. Forget it. I'm going to buy a bed. Chapter 884. The Full Fitness Fire Treatment Plan was a new plan that Long Ming had taken the lead in submitting. The purpose of everything was to raise enough funds for Night Chief in the short term, so that they could carry out the next wave of operations. Nowadays, it wasn't easy to do anything. The cost of transnational crime was too high, and President Bai had to change his identity every time he went to Wuxia Nation. The price of identity information on the dark online network alone was sky-high, and he was now a transnational SSSR-level wanted criminal. As soon as he entered the country, as long as his real identity was discovered by customs, he could be directly shot on the spot. There had been precedents for this type of criminal before. It was a dark network cybercriminal called Yushi Bird, the she as in the red sunset, and bird as in the beast. This famous female wanted criminal controlled various online forums to post all kinds of rumors and information, and repeatedly led the way. She charged people to delete posts, manipulated them in the dark, and planted a small tent virus on the public network, causing it to be paralyzed. Later, Wuxia Alliance approved and decided to shoot this Yushi Bird on the spot. It was said that this Miss Yushi Bird didn't die peacefully. Just like that, she became the first famous keyboard warrior in Wuxia Nation's history to be shot. The internet wasn't a place where she could get away scot-free. She didn't know how much trouble her actions would cause innocent people, nor did she think carefully about the consequences of her actions. She had been discovered by customs at the security checkpoint on the way to Sun Island. When she was shot, a bullet the size of a durian had pierced her chest directly. Yushi Bird's eyes were wide open, and blood had splattered all over her face, which had been injected with hyaluronic acid. When she fell to the ground, her pointed chin was like an awl as it pierced deep into the ground. President Bai had seen this scene before, and he still had lingering fear. Customs' shoot-to-death bullet was specially made, and was also known as the death bullet. Each one was extremely expensive to make, in order to ensure that these criminals would die on the spot as soon as possible. Thus, President Bai had no choice but to buy new identity information, which was an expense he couldn't bear to part with. Unless he really had no other choice, he wouldn't cause trouble for himself. The death bullet had an extremely strong ability to inflict serious injuries, which was simply the bane of his existence. President Bai shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Our next operation is against number 60 high. I'm going to uproot number 60 high. With sufficient funds this time, there's no harm in blowing up this mere foundation establishment stage school. Long Ming was also full of confidence regarding this. However, the two of them still felt uneasy. And the source of this unease was Wang Ling. This young man. No. They didn't want to admit that this was a 16-year-old boy. It was obvious that this was a big shot. But they had never been clear on why such a big shot was studying at number 60 high. President Bai had always been stubborn, and wanted to get revenge on Wang Ling. And now President Bai had clearly thought it through. Revenge against the king's order. This plan was basically impossible to achieve. So after careful consideration, President Bai modified the plan to blow up the school. While he was thinking, the alarm inside Night Chief suddenly went off, and its piercing wail resounded throughout the entire Night Chief base. What's going on? Hurry up and investigate. Baizha frowned slightly. Their base had been relocated several times, and was now underground. It would be very difficult to discover them. Knowing that Mishio Nation's FCI was already searching for Night Chief had been on high alert for the last 2 days. The technicians were retrieving a schematic of the invasion, which was a 3D model of Night Chief's base. The place of invasion was marked with the heat source, and it could be clearly seen that there was a powerful energy rapidly cutting through the ground from above the base like a sharp knife, penetrating deep into the soil and invading. What's this? Ah. My blazing biceps. Ah. This little mouth is swallowing me. It hurts. Very quickly, there were screams from above the base. President Bai's eyes were fixed on the direction of the heat invasion, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Impudent. You're actually looking for trouble with me? He looked up at the sky and let out a shrill cry. In a split second, an invisible sound wave spread out, and a huge hole appeared in the ceiling with a bang. Long Ming's liver ached when he saw this. Now, they would have to use the money they had just earned to repair the base again. A large part of the reason why Night Chief wasn't doing well at the moment was because of the damage to the base. And every time there was a fight at the base, President Bai couldn't help making a hole in it. Long Ming wanted to cry. It wasn't easy to make money. The worst thing was that this sound wave technique actually had no effect on the invading thing. Instead, the invading thing crawled through the hole into the base's central control room. It was actually a giant red worm, and it was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it licked all the major personnel in the base with its long tongue. With each person it swallowed, its body swelled up a little. Long Ming, hurry up and use your Dragon Clan's secret technique. Control this gluttonous snake. Seeing that his opponent was a worm, President Bai was even less flustered. Long Ming's Dragon Clan secret skill originally had a strong control effect on insects. If he could capture such a strong worm, he would be able to control it. If he could capture such a powerful worm, it would be a pretty good fighting force. Lord Venerable, please protect me. Long Ming nodded and swiftly responded. A magic seal bloomed in his hand, and then it swiftly formed. Then Long Ming slapped the ground with one hand, and a series of runes blossomed like a lotus flower to form a circular array. Then Long Ming swiftly slit his wrist and dripped his blood on the array. The moment the blood fused into the array, a fragrance instantly wafted over. This is... President Bai frowned slightly. This is my Dragon Clan's secret insect-catching array. When I sprinkle the power of my blood on it and ignite it, it will produce a unique fragrance which insects and spirit beasts can't resist. As long as the other party enters this array, they'll be imprisoned by it. But won't it be dangerous for you to just stand here? President Bai asked. Lord Venerable, rest assured I won't. These captured insects will be completely attracted by the fragrance of my blood and forget my existence. It's impossible for them to attack me. I can... Before he could finish his sentence, the worm above his head directly stuck out a tongue and swept Long Ming away. President Bai. You actually think my venerable self is a worm? What a blind person. But the smell isn't bad. Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at President Bai. When I crossed the sea to come here, I suddenly smelled a very strong energy underground. It looks like it's you without a doubt. President Bai. To break into this place, you have to pay the price. Before he could say the word price, President Bai was gone. Chapter 885. This was an extremely bad battle experience. It wasn't just Long Ming. Even President Bai felt that he had been caught a little off guard. But Long Ming and President Bai hadn't truly died, because Devil Gut Fungus Lord had merely devoured them and obtained their power. President Bai's description was very apartment. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was essentially a gluttonous snake, and the more he devoured, the more powerful he became. Secret arts of the White Clan, secret arts of the Dragon Clan. After devouring the two people, Devil Gut Fungus Lord swiftly digested his new power. The Dragon Clan's formidable insect control ability, and the White Clan's formidable secret art of creation boosted Devil Gut Fungus Lord's confidence. He no longer had to worry about the Buddha's light illumination. This secret art of creation was too powerful. Even if he was being roasted by the Buddha's light, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was confident that he could quickly repair his damaged bacteria. The power of repair and the powerful ability to reproduce complemented each other, which gave the germs which Devil Gut Fungus Lord bred the ability of superbugs. The combination of the ability to recover and the ability to reproduce delighted Devil Gut Fungus Lord. And most importantly, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was pleasantly surprised to discover that President Bai actually had the power of outer Tao. He had simply swallowed a big treasure. Although President Bai hadn't completely collected the power of the 6 great outer Tao yet, he already possessed 3 types of power. Unfortunately, he was the one who ultimately benefited from these outer Tao powers. President Bai had underestimated the enemy, and had been devoured before he even had a chance to activate reverse 2 poles. Just now his life had really been hanging by a thread. As expected, I'm the chosen one. Devil Gut Fungus Lord sneered sinisterly. If President Bai had used the power of reverse 2 poles just now, the devouring would have been ineffective, because reverse 2 poles was an outer Tao ability that defied the heavens and changed one's fate. Furthermore, this outer Tao ability usually wouldn't be used lightly unless one's life was hanging by a thread. This was an expert's negligence. Nowadays, too many experts didn't even have a sliver of HP left and didn't know how to fight at all, so they lost in vain. It could be said that President Bai was a classic example. Furthermore, he actually dared to speak in battle. Usually, the one who died did so because he talked too much. Our combination is simply heaven-sent. Devil Gut Fungus Lord cackled. In the next moment he waved his hand, and many spatial summoning arrays appeared on the ground out of thin air. He combined his summoning formation with the dragon race's secret technique to connect to Insect Valley. He summoned the strongest and cruelest bug in Insect Valley, the Undying Bug. This was a kind of black caterpillar that was half a meter long and covered with sharp thorns. Its body was covered with poisonous thorns, and it liked the dark. It was not afraid of water and fire, but it preferred to live in water. In an environment with liquid, the undying worm's undying ability would be displayed to the fullest. In just a short span of 3 seconds, the undying worm would be able to recover immediately, no matter how severe its injuries were, as long as it didn't die immediately. The undying worms did not like to be exposed to sunlight, So Devil Gut Fungus Lord had applied a layer of fungal coat on the summoned undying worms to block the light. Thus, when Immortal Toya rushed to the battlefield, he saw a terrifying scene that looked like the end of the world. On the border of Mishio Nation, a sinkhole several li long had sunk in, and a dense swarm of undying worms occupied most of Immortal Toya's line of sight. Like a fountain, they poured out of the sinkhole in a steady stream and devoured everything around them, even eating away at their own kind. One by one, the electric poles and vehicles on the road were devoured, and the roads and green belts on the outskirts were also eaten away bit by bit. This scene was so horrifying that it felt like the scene of a car accident at a New Year's Eve concert. Immortal Toya, who had fused with the pagoda spirit, arrived at the scene. His whole body gave off alternating blue and green spirit light. Immortal Toya's healing spirit energy was originally azure blue, but after fusing with the pagoda spirit, his spirit light now had a touch of green. This was Immortal Toya's first international mission. On one hand, it was to boost the Office of Strategic Deception's international status, and on the other hand, it was to calm his mind so that he could go further down the road. Looking at the scene in front of him, Immortal Toya, dressed in a purple Taoist robe, pursed his lips tightly. His eyes were extremely cautious as he paid close attention to the powerful fluctuations of energy underground. At the same time, there was a slightly shaken expression on his face. That was because this fluctuation was much stronger than when they had encountered President Bai before. I don't want to know what's going on at all, Immortal Toya said to himself. In the end, the pagoda spirit replied in his mind. What an incompetent good-for-nothing. You can't even see this? Devil Gut Fungus Lord devoured Baijia's strength, and even that descendant of the dragon clan was devoured as well. So that was what was going on. Immortal Toya nodded to himself. His combat ability had indeed improved, but for the moment, Immortal Toya was completely clueless about what to do in this situation, and didn't know how to deal with it. A lack of combat experience was an apothecary's Achilles heel. In a peaceful era, their biggest role was to refine elixirs and the like. In the past, when apothecaries met each other, and threw out an angry Buddha fire lotus without saying a word, Oldly had long since ended. As a modern apothecary, his current role in the current situation was to play the role of a nanny, and it just so happened that this role had always been despised. Nowadays, a lot of battles depended on combat strength, and there was an endless stream of flashy spells. Any side that brought along an apothecary nanny would be despised. Hence, when forming a team of cultivators who went out to gain experience, it was clearly stated, no nannies. When going out to gain experience, as long as you prepared enough healing elixirs in advance, there was no need to bring an apothecary with you at all. Not only was the cost of hiring an apothecary high, any apothecary who was casually brought along would be labeled a coward. This was a particular prejudice modern cultivators had against apothecaries, which many apothecaries couldn't do anything about. While Immortal Toya was pondering this, the ground suddenly shook, and a purple-black figure burst out of the ground like a fountain. Another one here to deliver his head? In the air, Devil Gut Fungus Lord stared at Immortal Toya from a distance with a crafty expression on his face. He noticed the layer of blue and green light wrapped around Immortal Toya, and a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. A world-defying magic artifact? It looked like this wasn't just delivering his head, he was also delivering equipment. He had been worried that he didn't have a suitable place to grow his bacteria. This magic artifact was actually pretty good. Genius. 1 second. Remember website URL. Mobile version URL. Chapter 886. As the Toya clan's ancestral world-defying magic artifact, the 9 Cycles Exquisite Pagoda had been an unprecedented boost to the clan. This was a magic artifact left behind by the clan's ancestors. Unlike a certain person who relied solely on an ancestral granny to fight, the pagoda spirit of the 9 Cycles Exquisite Pagoda had formidable combat ability. What do you think your chances of winning are if you use a foreign object to fight? Devil Gut Fungus Lord stood steadily in the air. With a wave of his hand, the countless immortal bugs on the ground surged toward Immortal Toya like locusts. The immortal bugs blotted out the sky and the sun, forming a huge shadow that covered the area in front of them with astonishing momentum. This array of bugs contained a super virus, so they absolutely couldn't get close. Ordinary Taoist robes wouldn't be able to withstand it at all. The slightest contact would instantly turn them into a rag. However, it wouldn't be easy for these virus-carrying immortal bugs to get close to him. Don't stop them! Immortal Toya roared at the array of bugs. In the next moment, his body moved on its own. The tower spirit was controlling his body. In an instant, green spiritual light surged out of his body and collided directly with the pitch-black insect formation that covered the sky. This green light was none other than the light of purification unique to apothecaries. The light of purification was also related to the qi accumulated in apothecaries' bodies after refining medicine for many years. This qi was called medicine qi. A senior pharmacist could have up to 10,000 kinds of medicine qi, which had a lot to do with the medicinal herbs they used to refine medicine. Thus, while Immortal Toya was repairing the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda, he had worked himself to the bone in order to raise enough money to repair the magic artifact, and it wasn't completely in vain. For many people, it might be impossible to work, but it was very useful. During this period of time, Immortal Toya had taken on over 100 different tasks, and the number of medicinal herbs he had come into contact with had also increased significantly. That was because many of the refinement orders required customers to provide complete sets of medicinal herbs. Even if they failed in the end, Immortal Toya didn't need to pay any compensation at all. This was because customers who came to him to refine medicine would generally take out refinement insurance to ensure that losses were minimized in the event of a failure. On the other hand, Immortal Toya would also conduct research on new types of elixirs, and the materials for these elixirs were also developed by Immortal Toya in a different way. For example, the IFI pill, the portable rechargeable pill, the beauty pill, and the yellow pill that was popular among the upper-class men some time ago. After many medicinal ingredients were mixed together, they became a new type of medicinal ingredient. Before he knew it, the number of medicinal herbs that Immortal Toya had come into contact with had already exceeded 10,000. There were primitive medicinal herbs, common medicinal herbs, as well as many rare and mutated medicinal herbs. Now that the medicinal qi of these medicinal herbs overlapped with each other, and with the help of the pagoda spirit's power, this purifying light actually became exceptionally powerful. Green light enveloped the horizon, just like the sun piercing through the dark night, and the dawn quietly streaking across the horizon. The light of purification shuttled through the cycle of reincarnation. The moment the virus-laced undying worms came into contact with the purifying light that was mixed with tens of thousands of medicinal qi, their bodies emitted hot steam, and finally turned into small balls of fire, directly burned to death. Immortal Toya was overjoyed at this scene. The purifying light, combined with tens of thousands of medicinal qi, was the natural nemesis of these viruses and undying worms. Their fierce attack created a heroic déjà vu of moths flying into a flame, as if hundreds of thousands of moths were running into the fire. Devil Gut Fungus Lord realized that he had underestimated the power of the purifying light, which was a mixture of tens of thousands of medicinal qi. This purifying light didn't just contain medicinal qi. It was also mixed with all kinds of antibiotics and vitamins A, B, C, F, G. The undying worms couldn't enter his body at all, and neither could the viruses. But however, Devil Gut Fungus Lord didn't panic at all. These undying worms looked fierce, but the truth was that he hadn't even used 20% of his strength. Although this purifying light was difficult to deal with, it could withstand the attack of hundreds of thousands of virus-laced undying worms. What if he increased the number? 10 million undying worms. In the next moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord shook his finger. The ground trembled, and countless undying worms surged out of the cracked earth like a volcanic eruption. Both Immortal Toya and the pagoda spirit were stunned at this scene. This kind of power had already completely surpassed true immortal level. And most importantly, these tens of millions of virus-laced undying worms had gained a whole new level of power. Each undying worm was actually surrounded by a dark blue light. This was the power of the water element. President Bai originally had the power to enslave the elements of outer Tao. Now that Devil Gut Fungus Lord had swallowed President Bai's power and applied the power of the water element to the undying worms, the purifying light had just burned them, but these undying worms actually came back to life again. How was he going to fight now? Immortal Toya felt that he couldn't hold on much longer. After swallowing President Bai, Long Ming and many of Night Chief's senior members, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's abilities had improved tremendously. This frightening spiritual pressure made Immortal Toya sweat profusely. Crap. I can't hold on much longer. Immortal Toya held on with all his might. But in the face of the pressure from these 10 million undying worms, the green purifying light was dissipating little by little. In the end, the army of 10 million insects successfully gnawed on Immortal Toya's finger. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was overjoyed at this scene. This is like an ant trying to shake a tree, a mantis trying to stop a chariot. He recited 2 idioms in a row to show that he was very cultured. At the same time, he gazed deeply at Immortal Toya, who had been swallowed up. In a flash, he could already sense that Immortal Toya's aura had completely disappeared. Furthermore, he had already lost the idea of swallowing Immortal Toya. He carefully controlled the undying worms, and his only goal was the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda. With a wave of his hand, Devil Gut Fungus Lord moved the army of 10 million insects away. He was surprised to find that the green purifying light which the pagoda spirit had emitted hadn't been completely extinguished, and a tiny cluster of light, like a firefly, was still floating in the air. In the next moment, Immortal Toya's body actually regrew along this cluster of fireflies. In the end, something unexpected happened. Immortal Toya was resurrected. And at that moment, there were actually 2 pagoda spirits standing behind Immortal Toya. What was this? Devil Gut Fungus Lord was very puzzled. Holding hands, the 2 pagoda spirits circled Immortal Toya. Immortal Toya smiled. In the end, this was an uncultured bacterium. It didn't even know what 2-people rotation was. Chapter 887. When the second pagoda spirit came out, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was stupefied. There had only been 1 pagoda spirit, but now there were 2? And it was clear that this wasn't a clone of the pagoda spirit, but an extra one. Immortal Toya's strength and aura had doubled after the appearance of the second pagoda spirit. What on earth was going on? Devil Gut Fungus Lord took a deep breath. He manipulated an army of 10 million insects with the power to devour everything. But at the same time, such a huge commotion alarmed Mishio's government forces. Night Chief was already under Mishio's surveillance to begin with. Now that there was a huge energy fluctuation on the border, the defense mechanism was activated. Now Devil Gut Fungus Lord's opponent wasn't just Immortal Toya. There was also Mishio's National Defense Army, as well as Mishio cultivators who had heard the news and were now on their way. The situation didn't look good, but Devil Gut Fungus Lord was still very calm. To him, these Mishio cultivators who had heard the news were nothing more than energy supplements. The more he devoured, the stronger he would become. Boom. Several missiles flew at Devil Gut Fungus Lord, who didn't even look at them as he directly manipulated his insect army to block them with his body. There was an explosion in the sky, and a large number of insects were burned to death in a raging inferno. These weren't ordinary missiles, but spirit power bombs, which were compressed from high-density spirit power molecules. The large-caliber warheads were more destructive than primitive nuclear bombs, and they were very environmentally friendly, and didn't have radiation or other side effects. In the Second World War of modern cultivation history, a single spirit power bomb directly destroyed a country. The powerful shockwave caused Devil Gut Fungus Lord to be shaken by the airflow in the air, but it was completely harmless. You want to deal with me with just a few missiles? You're still too inexperienced. Devil Gut Fungus Lord raised his hand high, completely disregarding the National Defense Army's missiles. The truth was that given Devil Gut Fungus Lord's current ability, he could already have his insect army devour the missiles before they exploded. What happened just now was purely because Devil Gut Fungus Lord wanted to test how strong the missiles were. In the end, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was very disappointed. These missiles were too weak. They were far weaker than the Wutian Golden Buddha Palm. In Devil Gut Fungus Lord's view, these missiles weren't even as strong as Immortal Toya's light of purification. Did they fail? In the National Defense Command, an officer saw the scene from the satellite surveillance screen. Commander, what should we do now? The technician in charge of ballistic control was also breaking out in cold sweat. We can only continue to use missiles to harass them. Bigger warheads are still being approved. But as soldiers of Wuxia Nation, is it really okay for us to speak Wuxia so openly? The author hasn't passed CET4, so there's nothing I can do about it. Now is not the time to argue about this. Has Wuxia Alliance issued a notice? It has been sent, Commander. Wuxia Alliance had already sent all the hero cultivators to the front. The fastest reinforcements are about to arrive. Very good. The commanding officer nodded. At the same time, his gaze fell on Immortal Toya's face on the monitor. When all was said and done, this was an invasion on Wuxia Nation's border. They didn't want the limelight to be stolen by a Wuxia cultivator. Wuxia Alliance was Wuxia Nation's alliance of cultivators. Although its organizational structure was slightly different from Wuxia Alliance's, Wuxia Alliance's role was the same. It was responsible for maintaining and coordinating order among the major cultivator organizations, tabulating the ranking of the most powerful cultivators in the country, and so on. Compared with other countries, Wuxia Alliance also had a special feature, and that was its hero mechanism. At that moment, the nearest hero had already rushed to the front of the battlefield. In the air, the two pagoda spirits circled around Immortal Toya, and then fused with him. Two green balls of light appeared around Immortal Toya's body, like planets orbiting the sun. As Devil Gut Fungus Lord had said, his battle strength had already doubled. But this duel was still not going to be easy. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was too strong. Perhaps Immortal Toya would have to use the full power of the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda before he could put up a fight. But to do so, Immortal Toya had to be killed 9 times. Each time he died, another pagoda spirit would appear next to him. Right now he was in the 2-people rotation state. His strongest form was the 9-people rotation state. So Immortal Toya had 9 lives in total. Devil Gut Fungus Lord had to kill him 9 times. Thus, the true pronunciation of rotation in the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda wasn't the 3rd, but the 4th. This was also how the 9 cycles exquisite pagoda got its name. But the current situation was already very worrying, and the last thing Immortal Toya wanted was for Devil Gut Fungus Lord to continue relying on devouring to gain strength. However, the most worrisome situation had still happened in the distance. A masked heroine in a leather coat was swiftly moving forward while leaning on a building. White silk shot out of her butt. If Immortal Toya wasn't mistaken, this was probably spider silk. Don't be afraid. I'm here. The masked heroine spat out the spider silk from her, but onto the soles of Immortal Toya's feet, as she hung upside down in the air. Immortal Toya dropped his forehead into his hand. May I ask who you are? I'm Wuxia's A-class hero, Silken Heroine. The masked heroine proudly introduced herself in a loud voice. I don't have any other interests or hobbies, but I like to maintain world peace. This opponent looks very fierce, but don't worry, as long as I'm here, he won't be able to hurt you at all. Immortal Toya. Before the poor Silken Heroine could finish speaking, she had already disappeared. Immortal Toya looked down. There was already no trace of the Silken Heroine under his feet, except for a strand of spider silk that was still fluttering on the soles of his feet like chewing gum. Immortal Toya was a little speechless at this situation. He didn't know how strong an A-class hero was, but it was clear that Devil Gut Fungus Lord wasn't someone an A-class hero could deal with. Couldn't Wuxia Alliance send someone a little more reliable? Just as Immortal Toya was thinking this, an old man wearing a blue and white porcelain helmet strolled over unhurriedly in the air in the distance. Another one who's here to die? Devil Gut Fungus Lord sneered. He controlled the insect army to pounce on the old man. However, the old man just tilted his neck, and in the next moment, all the insects that got close to him actually changed. Their bodies were actually assimilated by the old man's porcelain power, and became extremely fragile. With a gentle push of chi, the old man turned these blue and white porcelain insects into fine powder. Immortal Toya was blank. You are? The old man in the blue and white porcelain helmet said faintly, I am an SS-class hero, Porcelano. Immortal Toya. Chapter 888. Porcelano. For some reason, when he heard this name, Immortal Toya felt like he couldn't spit it out. There was also that familiar silk-coiled heroine just now. This was Immortal Toya's first time seeing a humanoid Spider-Man who could spit out spider silk from its butt. Could this be a modern hero's bad taste? Immortal Toya wasn't too familiar with Michio's hero cultivators. He had only heard of a few who were famous in the International Alliance of Cultivators. Cultivators in different countries had different ideologies, but for the most part, for the sake of their reputation in the world, cultivators would do their best to accept missions issued by the Alliance of Cultivators and help maintain order. According to many cases, many cultivators had gradually gained their position and reputation in the Jianghu through such quests. Of course, there were exceptions, for example, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. This great death-courting senior never took the initiative to accept missions, but freeloaded them. In the end, he freeloaded off of them. Because it was an era of peace, modern cultivators paid more attention to reputation and status. And it was the same for Michio's hero cultivators. Of course, there was another important reason, and that was that in Michio Alliance, there was a lot of reward money for assisting Michio Alliance in completing missions. They had to rely on this to make a living. After all, everyone had to make a living through sponsored partnerships. Immortal Toya took a deep breath as he sensed activity all around him. Within a radius of 3,000 li, a lot of powerful auras were converging on the frontline battlefield, and more than 10 Michio hero cultivators were on their way. Some of these people were strong, while others were weak. The weak coming to the frontline battlefield was undoubtedly providing Devil Gut Fungus Lord with supplies. There isn't much time left, is there? Immortal Toya sighed. He realized that he had to resolve this battle as soon as possible. And there actually wasn't much time left. In 6 minutes at most, those hero cultivators would arrive on the scene. To avoid the situation becoming chaotic, he had to resolve this battle in 6 minutes. Foreigner. At that moment, SS-level hero Porcelano strolled out of the air. With every step he took, a blue and white porcelain flower bloomed beneath his feet, giving him an awe-inspiring sense of majesty. Immortal Toya already had a general understanding of Porcelano's abilities. He had the ability to shatter. Everything that got close to Porcelano's body would instantly turn into fragile porcelain, and then be shattered by his aura. This was an extremely advanced assimilation of matter spell, but it also had a fatal flaw, and that was that if you were the slightest bit careless, you could easily assimilate yourself. As an SS-level hero, it could only be said that Porcelano was Porcelano. He had gotten rid of the danger of assimilation, and refined this spell into his passive skill. As far as Immortal Toya knew, Porcelano had put a lot of thought into refining this skill. The only regret was that Porcelano had a lot of time. And now, no one wanted to hug their wife to sleep, only to have her turn into a porcelain doll the next day. Since I'm master, you foreigner, you said you I Porcelano, king you that. Since I said that you're a foreigner, you just need to watch carefully. This battle has never belonged to you from the start. Porcelano sneered. For this kind of demon, my ability is a natural counter to him. Foreigner, just watch and see. I'll help you win without doing anything. As he spoke, Porcelano jumped up and charged straight at the insect army. His assimilation of matter spell had already become a passive skill. As long as he could reach the center of the battlefield and touch Devil Gut Fungus Lord, it would be his victory. Want to get close to me? On the other side, it was clear that Devil Gut Fungus Lord had also reacted swiftly. This was a very dangerous old man. In front of him, the endless insect army had been assimilated into fragile blue and white porcelain, and it looked like it would be difficult to fend them off. Porcelano was full of confidence as he continued to push forward. Devil Gut Fungus Lord frowned slightly. He increased the number of immortal bugs again, and this time he no longer wrapped the immortal bugs with water elements. He attached the power of fire to the immortal bugs. The burning immortal bugs turned into small fireballs and smashed towards Porcelano. At first, Porcelano didn't understand the meaning of this move. But as the temperature increased, He sensed that something was wrong. The blue and white porcelain he was wearing was actually melting bit by bit at this high temperature. The intense heat had a huge impact on his assimilation of matter spell. Ah! Then, surrounded by the burning immortal insects, Porcelano let out a cry. I have to save him. Immortal Toya knew that Porcelano had already failed. But in this situation, he didn't dare approach him. He wasn't afraid of Devil Gut Fungus Lord's burning immortal insects, but of Porcelano himself. If he rushed over and was turned into porcelain, what would he do? Immortal Toya never expected that this social problem of racketeering would actually manifest itself on a cultivator's battlefield in a whole new way. No, there had to be a way. Immortal Toya took a deep breath. He had learned this trick from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal before. There had been several times when grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been at a disadvantage, and Immortal Toya had used his most powerful skill. And now was the most difficult time for him. Sure enough, when you couldn't solve a problem, you still had to look for Ling Jinren. Jinren. Senior Ling Jinren? At that moment, Immortal Toya raised his head and tentatively called out twice at the sky. However, the void was empty without the slightest response. Immortal Toya didn't believe it. Everyone knew that Ling Jinren, who was introverted on the outside, liked to do shady things like peeping. Although they weren't good with words and didn't say much in the chat group, everyone had a profound understanding of Ling Jinren's antics. Senior Ling Jinren? Immortal Toya shouted again. Actually, Immortal Toya was a little timid when he shouted. After all, his relationship with Ling Jinren wasn't as good as grenade-throwing Senior Immortals. If he shouted like this, the other party might not even pay attention to him. And the most important thing was that because of their bad relationship, Ling Jinren might not even be bothered to observe his performance on the front lines. So after thinking it over, Immortal Toya decided to add a wager. Ling Jinren, if you help me, I promise that from this moment on, I'll join the Crispy Noodle Snacks sect. I'll eat crispy noodle snacks with you every day. Just as he finished speaking, a spatial rift opened up in the void. Then, a bottle fell into Immortal Toya's hands. This was a bottle of 84 disinfectant which had been personally enchanted by Wang Ling. Chapter 889. A bottle of enchanted 84 disinfectant? Immortal Toya took the godly weapon with both hands, and unexpectedly didn't feel any ripples in his heart, because he felt that he was already used to it. Only Ling Jinren could do this kind of shocking and incomparably basic operation. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was also shaken by the appearance of this bottle of disinfectant. The truth was that he had already forgotten who had created him, and just felt that this bottle of disinfectant which had suddenly appeared was familiar. When Devil Gut Fungus Lord had still been a tiny bacterium, his spiritual intelligence hadn't matured yet, and he had no idea where on earth he had come from. This was why Devil Gut Fungus Lord had thought that he was a bacterium born with a golden spoon in its mouth, and was the true fungus of destiny. But what Devil Gut Fungus Lord never expected was that the moment this enchanted 84 disinfectant appeared, there would actually be some kind of resonance between the enchanted and the enchanted, which simultaneously stimulated Devil Gut Fungus Lord's memory. In Devil Gut Fungus Lord's mind, the tranquil and fair face of a teenager unexpectedly appeared. He had short hair that fluttered lightly, and there was a languid look in his eyes, as if he would never wake up. Looking at his face, he didn't look like a threat at all, and was just a harmless teenager. But this teenager gave Devil Gut Fungus Lord a great shock and a sense of crisis. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was already drenched in a cold sweat when he recalled this image, and all his attacks were interrupted. The instant Devil Gut Fungus Lord's thoughts paused, the millions of immortal bugs in the air became a headless swarm of flies, and started to tear each other apart. Seeing this, Porcelano hurriedly retreated. He pulled back dozens of steps in a row, and didn't dare rush in recklessly. Just now he had almost lost his life because he had been too aggressive and rash. At the same time, his eyes focused on the bottle of disinfectant in Immortal Toya's hand. He was convinced that it was because of this bottle of disinfectant that this ferocious Devil Gut Fungus Lord had stopped his attack. Porcelano. Brother, what is this bottle of magic weapon that looks like disinfectant? For a moment, Immortal Toya actually didn't know how to answer this question. A magic treasure that looked like disinfectant? No. This was a freaking bottle of disinfectant. The supermarket had a special price of 29.88 yuan per bottle. And it was the kind that bought one get one free during the special season. Immortal Toya glanced at the packaging for this bottle of disinfectant. The huge yellow words "free gift" were particularly eye-catching. This enchanted bottle of disinfectant was also a free gift. Generally speaking, gifts were only bundled together for promotion purposes when they were about to expire. But since it had already been through Ling Zhenren's hands, this bottle of disinfectant, which was about to expire, had clearly reached its peak. Sigh. It had actually been touched by Ling Zhenren's hot and beautiful hands. Staring at this bottle of disinfectant, Immortal Toya actually felt a little jealous. Impossible. Impossible. On the other side, Devil Gut Fungus Lord, whose memories had been awakened by the disinfectant and who remembered his origins, could not accept the truth before him at all. He clutched his head and screamed in shock. Immortal Toya sighed. He had already opened the bottle of disinfectant, and a pungent smell wafted out, making Devil Gut Fungus Lord feel even more pain. Devil Gut Fungus Lord was clearly at a distance, but the smell of this bottle of disinfectant was already effective on him. You want to kill me? Devil Gut Fungus Lord gritted his teeth and did his utmost to deny his origins. I was born the strongest. I don't have any master. My devouring power is invincible in the universe. Given time, I'll definitely become the Supreme Devil Lord. Devil Gut Fungus Lord shouted. The power of Outer Tao. He condensed all the 3 powers of Outer Tao that President Bai had already collected into his body. The 5 great elements gathered on his body to form an elemental glass armor, and all kinds of dazzling lights superimposed on each other. It was like a bunch of cheap light effects that a renminbi player would spend a lot of money on. They might be cheap, but they looked very awesome. In addition, the power of reverse polarity also appeared. A Tai Chi disc appeared on Devil Gut Fungus Lord's glass armor, which was the symbol of reverse polarity. Porcelano turned pale with fright. He even has this kind of Outer Tao. This was practically the Outer Tao that thousands of cultivators dreamed of. Obtaining it was like having the power to defy the heavens and change fate. Even if you were on the verge of death, with this ability, you could resurrect on the spot with full health. Is it Mishio Alliance? Tell the other hero cultivators to stop. This isn't an opponent they can deal with. Porcelano shouted. Porcelano was very clear about the current situation. Facing such an enemy, the rest of the hero cultivators wouldn't be of any use at all. Even he had almost been seriously injured by this enemy. If they recklessly charged over without a plan, it would be tantamount to sending themselves to their deaths from thousands of miles away. The current situation was already very messy. More people would only add to the chaos. Mishio Alliance responded. It's too late. In 1 minute, the hero cultivators will reach the front line. Porcelano grit his teeth. Bastard. 1 minute? Hearing their replies, Immortal Toya nodded. 1 minute was actually enough. And enough to punish this Devil Gut Fungus Lord several times over. Porcelano. Little brother, let's retreat. Your bottle of disinfectant is very strong, but it's up against the power of reverse polarity Outer Tao. There's no way you can kill him. Not necessarily. Immortal Toya shook his head. He poured out a drop of disinfectant, and like guanine throwing out sweet dew from a jade bottle, he sprayed it in Devil Gut Fungus Lord's direction. This glittering drop of divine liquid released extremely powerful spirit power, which actually carried a hint of annihilation. Porcelano's expression changed dramatically with fright. At the same time, the color of heaven and earth changed with this drop of divine liquid, and a huge vortex appeared in the air. The spirit power contained in this drop of disinfectant actually directly tore through the sky. Porcelano's jaw dropped in shock, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. This was actually the spirit power contained in a drop of disinfectant? He felt that the spirit power contained in this drop of disinfectant was dozens of times stronger than his. No, this was no longer disinfectant. It was a drop of super divine liquid, one of a kind. Sensing the danger of the divine liquid, Devil Gut Fungus Lord knew that he was powerless to resist, but relying on the power of reverse polarity outer Tao, he still laughed wildly. Want to kill me? I'm an immortal being. Busy. As soon as he said that, the divine liquid burst out with energy again, and a powerful purifying power swept across the area. In the next moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord's eyes were filled with astonishment as his elemental glass armor and the disk of reverse polarity outer Tao directly exploded on the spot. The power of this drop of disinfectant was above that of outer Tao. Chapter 890. This drop of divine liquid shook the air, and the world fell silent as the ripples spread out. Even immortal Toya was shaken by the power of this drop of divine liquid. After throwing it out, he stood motionless in the air for a long time, completely shaken by this scene. It turned out that all along, Ling Jinren was more powerful than he had imagined. Of course, immortal Toya knew that Ling Jinren was a top expert, but after personally experiencing the formidable power of this drop of disinfectant, immortal Toya completely understood. How the hell was this a top expert? This was simply a god. It seemed that Ling Jinren and the domain of the gods had a very close relationship. Immortal Toya secretly worshipped him in his heart. This wasn't a technique that people in the world below could use at all. In immortal Toya's view, this was already far above the venerated immortal realm, and only the legendary experts of the domain of the gods could trace the realm above the venerated immortal realm. Whether it was Wang Zhen or Lu Qingyi, immortal Toya had already come into contact with them. These two were experts from the domain of the gods, and their abilities were extraordinary. But what immortal Toya didn't quite understand was that, judging from Ling Jinren's performance, he seemed to have a very limited understanding of the domain of the gods. Could it be that Ling Jinren wasn't from the domain of the gods? Or perhaps, there was still a realm above the domain of the gods in this world? Immortal Toya pondered this in his heart. At the same time, in Porcelano's eyes, immortal Toya's action just now was like a miracle. So he's an expert. Porcelano had to admit that he had been blind. He had thought that this outsider from Wuxia nation wasn't strong, and had never thought that the other party would actually be able to take out such a magic treasure. Furthermore, after taking out that drop of divine liquid, which was clearly so powerful, the other party was actually unmoved at all as he stood in the air, as if he was doing something insignificant. This was a serious expert. It was very obvious that this expert was already a veteran of hundreds of battles. To remain unmoved by such a powerful fluctuation was the style of an almighty. It was just that there weren't many famous experts in Wuxia nation. That was because every nation had a different constitution. Wuxia Alliance didn't have a hero cultivator mechanism like Mishio Alliance. Wuxia Alliance's cultivators might be more famous locally, but they had always lacked international fame. Of course, the one who had recently risen to prominence was that great death-courting senior grenade-throwing senior immortal, the number one true venerated in the world. In Wuxia Alliance, Porcelano only knew the 10 generals, and really didn't know anyone else. Buzz. This drop of divine liquid penetrated everything and landed on Devil Gut Fungus Lord's chest. In just an instant, the divine liquid directly melted into his chest. Devil Gut Fungus Lord let out a heart-wrenching scream. He couldn't stop the power of this drop of divine liquid at all. At this moment, Devil Gut Fungus Lord felt like a piece of ice being cooked over fire. Endless steam was evaporating from his body as he hugged his head and shouted, "You created me, and now you want to destroy me." He had already accepted the fact that he had been created because Devil Gut Fungus Lord realized that he could not resist this destructive power at all. "If you had been wholeheartedly kind, I might have spared your life. But you've stirred up a storm in this vast world, so naturally I can't let you live." Immortal Toya stared at Devil Gut Fungus Lord, who was about to die. At that moment, only his upper body was left of him. In the distance, more and more hero cultivators were rushing over, many of whom still had mud and scars on their faces and bodies. They had all rushed to the front line as reinforcements after hearing Mishio Alliance's order. In the end, just as they were about to arrive, a sudden burst of overwhelming spirit power had scared some hero cultivators so much that they couldn't steady their auras and fell from the sky on the spot. This was how the bruises and scars on their faces and bodies had come about. "Don't be afraid. I'm here." A burly blonde man floated in the air with his arms crossed. He was thin to begin with, but the moment he arrived at the front line, his muscles suddenly inflated as if they had been filled with air. Even Porcelano couldn't help bowing when he saw him. Mr. Olu. This was the SSS-level hero, known as the Light of the City, Olu. He was also Mishio Alliance's most famous hero cultivator, the only SSS rank. But when he arrived at the scene, Devil Gut Fungus Lord was already dying. Mr. Olu sighed in disappointment. "It seems that there is no need for me to do anything. But this is good too." As the Light of the City, Mr. Olu was actually very tired every time he carried out a mission. His special spell caused him to have to eat hair to gain power. Every time he ate a strand of hair, his power would double from his original base. Given how dangerous Devil Gut Fungus Lord was, Mr. Olu originally thought that he would have to eat all the hair this time. A bald head was the symbol of his strongest combat power. It was also the origin of his hero codename, City Light. Porcelano. This Huashio little brother isn't to be trifled with. Mr. Olu should have already sensed it just now. Mr. Olu nodded. That was indeed a very powerful force. None of their Mishio Alliance cultivators, including himself, to be able to unleash such powerful psionic energy. Devil Gut Fungus Lord had already been reduced to ashes. On behalf of the group of hero cultivators, Mr. Olu and Porcelano took the initiative to greet Immortal Toya. "Brother, may I ask who on earth are you?" Immortal Toya. "I'm from the Office of Strategic Deception." The hero cultivators were suddenly enlightened. It turned out that this was the new sect that had recently produced a true venerated cultivator. "Then may I ask, Your Excellency?" Porcelano wanted to continue asking. Immortal Toya cupped his chin and thought carefully. He felt that it wasn't appropriate for him to reveal too much abroad. Immortal Toya. "I'm not sect leader. There's no need for sect leader to take action against this kind of evil." "Then may I ask, brother, what is your Taoist name?" Immortal Toya quickly replied. "I don't have a Taoist name. But please remember my name." "Brother, please speak." "My name is Audiobook." That night, Audiobook, who had already washed up and was about to go to bed, turned on the TV, and the female anchor reported eloquently. "According to the latest news our reporters have received, the evil that invaded Mishio's border today has been wiped out by the Office of Strategic Deception's cultivator Audiobook. Who on earth is this Mr. Joie? Let us hear what the other hero cultivators have to say about him." Audiobook rubbed his eyes and repeatedly confirmed the news on the subtitles. That wasn't right. When had he gone abroad? Chapter 891. News of the demon-slaying battle taking place across the sea far away on Mishio Nation's border spread faster than Audiobook had imagined. After seeing the news broadcast on TV, the battle-hardened Audiobook could more or less guess what had happened. Someone in the Office of Strategic Deception must have been carrying out a mission, and had given him the credit again. But the problem was that he was a golden core stage cultivator. Now that everyone was bragging about him, Audiobook immediately felt the pressure on him increase tremendously. In short, Audiobook knew very well. "I'm afraid I won't be able to rest tonight." After the midnight news was broadcast, the phone in Audiobook's apartment was ringing off the hook again with all kinds of congratulations. He checked the WeChat moments he had posted a few hours ago. The meaning of that sentence was actually very simple. There was only one simple word: tired. Of course, this wasn't because slaying demons was tiring. It was purely because he felt that ever since he had become the general administration of 100 schools and his reputation had risen rapidly, he felt a little powerless. But it just so happened that Audiobook's retirement age was still very early. He had just taken this position, and he would have to work for at least another 500 years before he could retire. After the midnight news broadcast, Audiobook's message instantly received almost a few hundred likes. As expected of Director Joie, he can vanquish evil and defend the Tao across the sea. I saw it all. That Mishio hero cultivator's utterly convinced expression when he was interviewed. No one has ever made the City of Light show such an expression of admiration. Director Zhua is young and promising. Not only does he manage the students' studies, he also eliminates evil and upholds the Tao outside of work. He's a role model for the younger generation. I heard that the evil spirit also destroyed the Chrysanthemum Island of Immortal Toya, the head of the Office of Strategic Deception's Elixir team. I have some movie resources here to celebrate Director Zhua's righteous deed. Director Zhua can contact me at any time. After Immortal Toya's Chrysanthemum Island is rebuilt, we'll use this as the theme and use Director Zhua as the main character to make a movie called 3 Lives, 3 Worlds, Tenli Chrysanthemum. Ajwa blushed at these praises, because this matter really had nothing to do with him. But since the Office of Strategic Deception had already decided on this, he had no choice but to take the blame. Ajwa felt very tired. He was just a scapegoat for someone else. But now he had become the Walk King of the sect. August 22nd, Tuesday, the 9th day of the summer vacation. When Ajwa went out that morning, the main entrance of the staff apartment building was already surrounded by a large group of reporters. They didn't dare break into the building directly, so they waited for him at the intersection in front of the building. Ajwa had to pass by on his way to work. When Ajwa appeared at the door, he immediately knew that something was wrong, but it was already too late to turn back as the reporters had already seen him. Director Zhua is out. After saying that, a reporter opened his briefcase, from which several telescopic eyes were released. They automatically floated in the air and aimed in Ajwa's direction to film him from all directions. These large mechanical eyeballs were now the hottest interview magic weapons in the reporter circle. As long as the photo of the interviewee was put in, the telescopic eyes would automatically identify the target and track the interview. However, this kind of magic treasure was very expensive to make, and a small newspaper couldn't afford it. Ajwa stood at the door, and several telescopic eyes had already taken the initiative to float over from a distance. Looking at the platform logo on the far-sighted hand, it was actually a toilet lid platform. The far-sighted hand played the interview questions which had already been recorded. Can Director Zhua reveal the details of how you defeated the evil spirit? I heard that the evil spirit was very strong, and Mishio Nation's missiles couldn't hurt it. As a golden core cultivator, what kind of magic weapon does Director Zhua have to defeat it? Ajwa was stupefied. Details? How would he know about this? He did have a magic weapon to defeat it. It was his Shifu Ajwa. But what could he say? He didn't dare say it at all. Ajwa sighed. The reporter in the distance heard Ajwa's answer. Love. That reporter was instantly stunned beyond belief by this simple yet powerful answer. It could only be said that as expected of the most famous cadre in Songhai City, who had arrested the most evil spirits and demons. The toilet lid platform reporter who used the telescopic eyes cried out in surprise. Director Zhua said that his magic weapon to defeat the evil spirit is actually love. There was a hubbub of voices. The group of reporters was also stupefied. Love. For a moment, the reporters on the road were silent as they pondered what on earth this meant. The toilet lid platform reporter sighed with emotion. It seems that the reason why the evil spirit was eliminated this time was because of Director Zhua's love. Director Zhua used the precise word love to vividly express his boundless and fearless love in the face of the evil spirit. His lofty ambition and his great determination to use love to influence the world. And his beautiful dream as a good cadre of the people. Love the people, love his work. He used his love and passion to influence the evil spirit. So that's how it is. Many of the reporters were dumbfounded for a moment. He quickly picked up a small notebook to record something. Ajwa. At that moment, the reporter started to ask again with the telescopic eyes. What I said should be correct, right? Is there anything else Director Zhua would like to add? Ajwa was at a loss for words. The toilet lid platform reporter cried out in surprise again. Me. Many of the other reporters who were taking notes looked up. Brother, may I ask, what does this mean? The toilet lid platform reporter took a few seconds to think, and then immediately knocked himself on the head. I'm such a blockhead. It actually took me so long to understand Director Zhua's meaning. Director Zhua's me. is clearly I for everyone and everyone for me. One me. This is Director Zhua's magic weapon for victory this time. Director Zhua wants to tell us that when we encounter danger and difficulties, we should be like him, fearlessly sacrificing myself and spreading love to every corner of the world. So that's what he means. What a talent, brother. Brother, you're awesome. At that moment, the telescopic eye's voice came again. Thank you for your brilliant answer, Director Zhua. Our interview is over. We won't disturb Director Zhua anymore. If we do, we'll be criticized as well. Watching the telescopic eyes disappear into the distance, as well as the group of reporters who had scored full marks in Chinese reading comprehension, Audiobook fell into a long silence. His heart was so tired. Chapter 892. That day, Audiobook took sick leave and didn't go to work. After the group of reporters dispersed, he texted Zhong Lang. Little Zhong, I'm not feeling well today. There's been a lot of work at the office recently, sorry to trouble you. Audiobook had always been a very polite person. Although Zhong Lang had only been working with him for a few months, and the general administration of 100 schools in Songhai City had become increasingly busy as Audiobook's reputation rose, Zhong Lang didn't feel tired at all. Audiobook was his superior and his brother, and the two of them were actually very close in private. Brother Zhua, if you're not feeling well, leave it to me. Take care of yourself. You have to go to work, and you also have to vanquish evil in passing. It's really hard on you. Zhong Lang was watching the morning news when he texted Audiobook. The female anchor of the morning news rebroadcasted the Devil Gut Fungus Lord incident, and now the whole world knew that Audiobook had gone abroad to deal with someone back at the apartment. Audiobook put down his briefcase, took off his suit and shirt, and went to the fridge to take out a bottle of leather wine. This wasn't beer that ordinary people drank, but genuine leather wine with the slogan "Be Naughty and Happy" written on the bottle. This leather wine was made from fermented spirit herbs, and could make people feel happy when they were vexed. But leather wine was still wine. In the end, it wasn't good to drink too much. Usually, Audiobook would just drink a bottle after work to relieve his stress, but now he took out all the wine in the fridge because he felt particularly irritable today. For some reason, Audiobook felt that he was living less and less like himself. Furthermore, he was very unhappy. Bottle after bottle of leather wine went down his throat, but it still didn't alleviate his gloominess. When the alcohol level in his blood reached saturation, Audiobook lay on his back on the sofa and let out a long burp before he threw his head back and howled. Unbearable. Ma Fei. Who's Ma Fei? Forget it. Who cares who he is? Unbearable. I feel so unbearable. Audiobook felt that he was losing more and more confidence. He lay on his back on the sofa. The leather wine in the bottle had already been used up, and he casually tossed it aside with a headache. The strong alcohol had already soaked through every vein in his body, and he fell into a deep sleep. At noon, Audiobook still hadn't woken up under the influence of the alcohol. At this moment, in his staff apartment, the sound of the doorknob turning came from the outer door. A slightly chubby man in black clothes barged into the apartment. I've already successfully infiltrated. The man in black clothes said softly. His mask was a communication treasure that could be used to contact external members. It wasn't easy to break into the staff apartment, but as a famous assassin of the dark web, Kong Rui still completed his mission. He rarely did this kind of infiltration work, but the big boss who hired him offered a high price that he couldn't refuse. After finishing this last job, I will retire. At the door, Kong Rui sighed. He took off the cloak that was draped over his shoulders and covered his entire body. Then his figure and aura completely disappeared. In the living room, Audiobook was sprawled out on the sofa, drool dripping from the corner of his mouth. Kong Rui looked at the wine jars scattered on the coffee table, and his entire body tensed up to the extreme. This person didn't go to work today? Furthermore, how could an expert who had just exterminated evil spirits be drunk by a few jars of leather wine? He didn't believe it. Kong Rui's first reaction was that Audiobook was most likely faking it. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead as he observed Audiobook's movements from a distance, and unexpectedly didn't dare act rashly. A true expert was even more difficult to deal with when he was drunk. Inside the cloak, Kong Rui was drenched in sweat. As long as he didn't act, he was sure that he wouldn't be discovered. The cloak he was wearing was a world-defying magic weapon that had been passed down from his ancestors. Although his realm wasn't high, it was this cloak that had given him the courage to travel all over the world for so many years. But now Kong Rui was faced with a difficult problem. He was wondering whether he should act against Audiobook. If this person was really drunk, then so be it. But if he was faking it, Kong Rui might not be able to keep his life. This task, it was more arduous than he had imagined. The request he had received was to retrieve a strand of Audiobook's hair. Although he didn't know what his employer was going to do with Audiobook's hair, it had sounded like a simple task at the time. All he had to do was break into the apartment while Audiobook was at work and look for a strand of hair. But now, because he couldn't determine whether or not Audiobook was faking it, Kong Rui felt a lot of psychological pressure. After breathing deeply for several dozen seconds, Kong Rui decided to bypass Audiobook and avoid making direct contact with him. Although the person in question was at home right now, directly going over to cut his hair might be life-threatening. Judging from Audiobook's habits, this person didn't bother with trifles. Maybe he could find a clue to Audiobook's hair in the bathroom. But when he arrived at the bathroom, Kong Rui was dumbfounded once again. He couldn't imagine that a man's bathroom could actually be so organized and so clean that not even a speck of dust could be found. Kong Rui bent down and touched the sink. There wasn't even a strand of hair in it. It looked like this director Zhua basically didn't lose his hair when he showered. And even if he did, he had a habit of cleaning it up. Why, Kong Rui felt very hurt. Why did this man have so much hair, and why was he so strong? If even the bathroom was so clean, it looked like there wasn't any hair in the bedroom. The wine jars that were strewn about outside were just Audiobook's occasional indulgence. To be cautious, he went to the bedroom to confirm that there was no hair, and finally set his sights on the drunk Audiobook in the living room. So I have to do it myself? Kong Rui swallowed, took out a pair of small scissors, and slowly crawled over to the sofa. Just as he was about to make his move, Audiobook suddenly roared. Do you know? Do you know you're fat and I'm thin? Damn it. He'd been discovered. Kong Rui put away the scissors, drenched in sweat. He was clearly wearing a cloak, but the other party had actually guessed that he was fat. Sure enough, this guy was in disguise. In a panic, Kong Rui hurriedly fled out of the apartment, but at that moment, Audiobook actually flipped over and caught his foot. Ah! Kong Rui, who had just been about to flee, screamed and abruptly fell to the ground. His forehead made intimate contact with the coffee table in front of Audiobook with a loud bang. This coffee table had been a gift from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal on the opening day of the Office of Strategic Deception. It was made of a special material that was extremely hard, and even a soul formation cultivator wouldn't be able to break it easily. Thus, Kong Rui passed out with his head covered in blood. Chapter 893. Wednesday, August 23rd. It was the 10th day of the summer vacation. In the morning, Audiobook finally woke up from his drunken stupor. He touched his lower body. It was soft and meaty. He had dreamed of Wang Ling just now, and had even pinched his Shifu's face. Shifu usually had a poker face and didn't even smile, but in his dream last night, Audiobook had dreamt that Shifu had smiled and had actually said a lot of encouraging words to him. For a moment, Audiobook couldn't help pinching his dear Shifu's little face. He had wanted to do this for a long time, but had never had the guts to try it. As expected, it was better to dream. Everything was possible in dreams. Thus, as he pinched, Audiobook woke up. That soft and meaty feeling was a little hard to forget. Shifu's face clearly looked very thin, but why did it feel so good to pinch? Audiobook couldn't help pinching the meaty thing below him a few more times. Then, he suddenly felt that there was something wrong with the feeling. This flesh was clearly a lot older than in his dream. When Audiobook opened his sleepy eyes, he saw a fatty lying under him. The fatty's forehead had been hit hard and the floor was covered in blood, and he was unconscious. And just now, he had actually been pinching the fatties, but for a long time. Audiobook. Looking at the time, Audiobook realized that he was late for work again. Sure enough, he couldn't drink too much leather wine. It was bad for his body. Even now, he was still a little groggy. Audua flipped through his phone and saw that there were several missed calls. They were all from Zhonglang, who was worried that something had happened to Audua. In the end, he had even sent a text message saying that he was going to come to the apartment to take a look. Audua hurriedly called back. Little Zhong, I'm fine. It's just that I stayed up too late last night and couldn't get up. Hearing that Audua had recovered, Zhonglang breathed a sigh of relief. It's good that Brother Zhua is fine. Don't stay up so late. By the way, did you play games all night yesterday? Games? Audua stared at the fatty's round butt. That's right. I played Overwatch all night last night. After hanging up, Audua finally breathed a sigh of relief. He was well aware that he couldn't alert the enemy yet. The problem was how to deal with this fatty. This fatty had fainted in his apartment, and it was obvious that he was up to no good. He actually came to his house while he was drunk, and he even had a pair of suspicious scissors in his hand. Who knew what he was going to do to him? Audua subconsciously covered his crotch. These days, there was no shortage of news of people having their dick cut off in their sleep. It was just that Audua couldn't understand why this fatty, a total stranger to him, would be so ruthless to him. No matter what, he had to first find someone to detain this fatty and interrogate him. As one of the Office of Strategic Deception's key leaders, his home had actually been invaded. This was actually quite a serious matter. The first thing he did was call Fangxing. Fangxing was the leader of the goon squad, and the Office of Strategic Deception's interrogations were handed over to him. Furthermore, the Office of Strategic Deception's goon squad was now connected to Warden Liang of Songhai First Prison. In other words, the goon squad's interrogations were legal. Okay, Brother Zhua, I'm coming. On the other end of the line, Fangxing's voice was still as sunny as ever, like the spring breeze and rain that moistened one's parched lungs. Audua nodded. I've got him under control. I'll be waiting for you. Audua had already confiscated the scissors and cloak Kong Rui had used to commit the crime. Furthermore, to be on the safe side, Audua had obediently tied Kong Rui up with an immortal binding lock. Audua had won this immortal binding lock when Songhai First Prison's Mahjong squad had gambled on it. The last time Audua had visited the prison, the Mahjong squad had been worried that they were short of one player. So Audua had personally played. Warden Liang hadn't believed that Audua would win, so he had used an immortal binding lock as a bet. After that, this immortal binding lock had been Audua's. It couldn't be helped. When it came to it, Audua was a human koi fish. His luck was just that good. Hands on his hips, Audua smiled in satisfaction. He then opened the curtains in the living room to let in the sunlight. Audua recalled that beautiful dream from last night. Unfortunately, when would he be able to pinch his Shifu's face in real life? Elsewhere, in the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling also gradually opened his eyes. He had had a very strange dream. He had actually dreamed of Audua. But it wasn't a prophetic dream, but a real dream of the mind. The real dream of the mind was used to maintain order. In many cases, it was a small heavenly Dao spell that Wang Ling had unconsciously activated. Usually, this spell would only work on the people around him whom he thought were important. Its main function was to adjust one's state of mind. In any case, one's state of mind was a very important factor that could affect a person's work, studies, and so on. If one's state of mind couldn't be adjusted, it would most likely turn into depression. Nowadays, many celebrities had died bearing this kind of psychological pressure. They were usually regarded as pretentious and fake. When these people needed care the most, they silently endured all kinds of violence and buried their pain in their hearts. Thus, in this situation, companionship was a very important factor. But the real dream of the mind had a very big drawback, and that was that Wang Ling didn't know what he would do in the dream, including what had happened. After the dream, he would completely forget everything. The real dream of the mind was a spell that could help teammates adjust their state of mind and treat depression. In the dream, Wang Ling mostly reflected what the master of the dream wanted him to look like. He would appear in the dream in the form that the master of the dream wanted him to be, and help the master of the dream recover his state of mind. As for last night's dream, Wang Ling didn't remember it at all. If it was a prophetic dream or an ordinary dream, Wang Ling would definitely remember it 100%. It was only in the case of the real dream of the mind that he would forget the dream. Dog 2 had been lying on the ground the whole time and wagging its tail. It looked at its little master Ling with a strange expression in its eyes. For some reason, it felt that little master Ling's cheeks were very, very red, as if someone had pinched them. But Face couldn't help but sigh at this scene. It could be assumed that little master Ling was also at this age, when he was full of vigor. Although this guy usually didn't speak or even smile, as his closest pet, Dog 2 had already figured out his little master's temper like the back of its hand. Therefore, it guessed that its little master must have had a sultry dream last night. Chapter 894. Thursday, August 24th. It was the 11th day of the summer break. The preliminary results of the interrogation of the dark network assassin Kong Rui, who had broken into Ajua's staff apartment, were already out. At first, Kong Rui vowed not to confess, and was very, very stubborn. Warden Liang and Ajua looked at each other and smiled. Without saying anything else, they directly sent Kong Rui to the mahjong room. In less than 5 minutes, Kong Rui had confessed to everything he had done. But there was a limit to what Kong Rui knew. The only clue Kong Rui knew about the employer who had spent a lot of money on Ajua's hair was the bank account number from which the money had been transferred. Ajua had someone check it, and discovered that it was a foreign private bank account. It was an international bank, and they had no right to access the other party's personal information. Warden Liang. Kong Rui's dark network is very expensive. Brother Zhua, you have to be more careful from now on. I don't know why the other party wants your hair. Could it be for a DNA paternity test? Do you have any nouveau riche great-grandfathers or great-grandmothers abroad? Ajua broke out in a sweat. You're thinking too much, old Liang. I was born and raised in Hujian. I grew up carefully under the care of my family, and I never left the house. It was only because of my good grades that I was admitted to Songhai City that the school here made an exception. Could it be some kind of enemy? Or a crime you committed as a child? I'm not sure about an enemy. I definitely wouldn't have an enemy when I was a child. Our Zhua family's group motto is not to go out at night. My parents always scared me when I was a child, saying that if we Fujian people went out, we would be caught and eaten by the people of Hudong. Speaking up to this point, Ajua's expression was a little helpless. But speaking of enemies, it was hard to say whether or not he would have any now that he was on the job. As the saying went, a tall tree attracts the wind. Ajua understood this principle. He had been in the limelight in the last few months, shouldering a lot of blame and provoking a lot of eyes and ears. There were always people who envied and hated him, who wanted to drag him down and kick him when he was down. There were a lot of people like this in society, and most of them weren't straightforward. Like snakes, worms, rats, and ants, they couldn't see the light and could only hide behind a rock to be a lowly fence-sitter. And he had seen more and more of these types of people since taking over at the general administration of 100 schools. He knew who these people were, but he always pretended that he didn't care. He knew that if he showed the slightest displeasure, he would fall into the trap of these despicable people. Who was investigating him? What did they want his hair for? Ajua felt that he had to keep an eye on this matter. At noon that day, Fatty Luo brought him good news. The initial forging of Jinka's scabbard was a success. In order to create a suitable scabbard for Jinka, Fatty Luo had gone through a lot of trouble just gathering the materials. He had suffered a lot for the 1,000 dried bone. But to synthesize equipment, collecting materials was always a troublesome matter. At this time, he had to bring out the perseverance of the Monster Hunter players and the hard-working spirit of the Onyx Soul players. Fortunately, the result wasn't too bad. Fatty Luo's success rate in making the scabbard was surprisingly good. He had made a total of 3 custom-made scabbards for Jinka, each made of the same material but slightly different in size. In the afternoon, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal personally came to Fatty Luo's shop to take a look, and found that the doorsill was gone. It was only later that he learned that Fatty Luo had torn down the doorsill of his own shop because it had been made of Amateus wood, the main material for the 3 scabbards. I remember that Amateus wood is a great treasure passed down in Brother Luo's family. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was stunned by Fatty Luo's enthusiasm. For my Lord Jinka, this little sacrifice is nothing. Fatty Luo waved his hand with an unperturbed expression. Come, Senior Immortal, please take a look at these 3 scabbards. He opened a rectangular box, which contained Jinka's scabbard. Fatty Luo proudly introduced them. The first scabbard is the little family Jasper Amateus scabbard. The mouth of the sword is designed with a Type-C interface. If Lord Jinka wants to put it in from the front, it doesn't matter if he wants to put it in from the back. The second scabbard is the Silky Enjoy Amateus scabbard. This scabbard is made of Amateus wood on the outside, and 1,000 dried bones and lubricating stone on the inside. When Lord Jinka puts it in, he will experience a noble feeling, like a moisturizing facial mask, and will enjoy the silky smoothness of the scabbard to the fullest. The third scabbard is the Virgo Compact Amateus scabbard. The mouth of this scabbard is on the small side, which gives Lord Jinka the feeling of wanting to resist but also welcoming. When Lord Jinka stabs it in, the protruding thread inside the scabbard is also a big selling point. Furthermore, the thread inside changes every day, so Lord Jinka won't feel bored. Fatty Luo said. Then what does the third scabbard have to do with Virgo? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help asking. Calling it Virgo just sounds more civilized. As long as you remove the word Virgo, it's actually a lot easier to understand, Fatty Luo answered. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was so startled by the design of these 3 scabbards that he almost dropped his melon seeds. Fatty Luo's words froze him in place for a long time. He really didn't know how to feel about these 3 scabbards, so he could only change the subject and ask the next question. As expected of Brother Luo, these 3 scabbards are all good, but they seem to be different in size. Is there anything special about them? There's nothing special about them. These 3 scabbards were made for Lord Jinka, but I don't know what he likes. But I don't know Lord Jinka's preferences. Some sword spirits like looser scabbards to be more comfortable, while others like tighter scabbards. It's just like wearing Durex. I wonder if Senior Immortal likes to wear loose ones, tight ones, or super thin ones. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Fatty Luo was lost in his masterpiece. Ever since I met Lord Jinka, I've fallen deeply in love with him. Being able to make a scabbard for Lord Jinka is already my life's greatest wish. Now that I've made this scabbard, I don't know if Lord Jinka will like it, but I have no regrets. But I think that no matter what, Lord Jinka will definitely be able to sense my feelings, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal wiped at his sweat. He didn't want to dampen Fatty Luo's enthusiasm. Maybe, Brother Jinka will be very moved when he sees it? Of course he will. Fatty Luo's lips curled up. I designed these 3 scabbards so that Lord Jinka will be so comfortable that he won't want to come out. Maybe he won't even want to move once he's in the scabbard. Genius 1 second remember website. Mobile version M. Chapter 895. Although these 3 scabbards weren't to Wang Ling's liking, in the end, they were Fatty Luo's sincerity. Wang Ling couldn't directly refuse him, so he entrusted Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to deliver them to his house. When Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal arrived at the Wang family's small villa that day, a rare sight that only appeared once in 100 years, the old man, Mother Wang and Father Wang were all sitting on the sofa watching the same TV series. It was a TV series about a fight in ancient times. Do you know or don't? It's you who attack and I take. The TV series told the story of 3 cross-dressing bigwigs who returned to their mansion after undergoing sex reassignment surgery in Thailand, where they fought openly and covertly in order to find a good man to marry off. Because of the bizarre plot, winding plot and complicated emotional lines, it attracted a lot of young men and women, as well as uncles and aunties, and had become a phenomenal piece of work for the past month. It even looked like it would surpass Yinshi Palace strategy and Rui's legend from a few months ago. Seeing this scene, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that the coffin of Wei Yingluo, the new lightning Dharmaraja who had attracted heavenly lightning to kill the old concubine, was probably going to collapse soon after they entered, Mother Wang didn't have time to entertain them at all. The TV series was on, and it was an acquaintance, so she told grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to help himself in the small villa. Little Lei. The tea is in the kitchen. If you want to drink it, make it yourself. Just treat it like your own home. I've also brewed the broccoli wine for you. It's in the basement. If you want to drink it, go get it yourself. Unfamiliar the first time, but familiar the second time. Mother Wang had already thoroughly regarded grenade-throwing Senior Immortal as one of her own. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was overwhelmed by this invitation. Although he was now famous as the #1 true venerated in the world, he was still just a little brother in the Wang family's small villa. Now that these three old seniors were sitting on the sofa watching a TV series, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal pondered it deeply. What kind of TV series could attract these three old seniors, who had seen through the world of mortals and lived ordinary lives in seclusion in the suburbs? To this extent, it was worth thinking about. When I go back today, I'll finish watching this TV series. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal made up his mind. The truth was that the TV series was only halfway through, but ever since the Office of Strategic Deception's rise, more and more film companies had come to grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to cooperate with, planning to rent some of the office's scenes for filming. It was for this reason that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's phone now had the contact information of a lot of big shots in the film and television company. If he wanted any TV series resources, he could just ask for them directly. By the time the toilet lid was cut for half an hour every day, it would be too late. There was no end to comprehending the heavenly Tao. Moreover, it had to be done quickly, the faster the better. Brother Ling. Before they went upstairs, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal shouted. With his penetrating gaze, Wang Ling saw grenade-throwing going upstairs with 3 condoms in his hands. Actually, this was the scabbard. However, Fatty Luo's introduction of the 3 scabbards was too dirty, and people couldn't help but think the wrong way. Wang Ling felt that he had still been a pure person before entering number 60 high school. Now he was being led astray by others. Almost every class had a few dirty demon kings. For example, in their grade 1 class 3, the biggest dirty demon king was Dopigua. Apart from gossiping, this guy's biggest hobby was driving. Moreover, he would brake suddenly for no reason, catching people off guard. When they entered the room, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal put the scabbard on Wang Ling's desk, and saw that Wang Ling was looking up some information. What is Brother Ling looking for? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. Little Master is looking for information on scabbards, woof. Lying on the floor, Dog 2 yawned lazily. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. As expected, Brother Luo's 3 scabbards aren't good enough. Little Master said it wouldn't be good to undermine his confidence, so he still accepted them, woof. Speaking up to this point, Loopy Toad sighed. Actually, it's not a problem with the scabbards. Fatty Luo even took out his family's ancestral Amateus wood, which shows how much effort he put into this. But it won't be easy to get Lord Jinka to stay quietly in the scabbard. If you don't believe me, take a scabbard and try it on. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. He casually pulled out a tight scabbard and tried to approach Jinka, but in the end he felt a strong resistance. Forget putting it on, he couldn't even get close. See, Dog 2 said. Lord Jinka is used to being naked, so he's not used to having a scabbard on him. His relationship with the scabbard is like skinny to a pokeball. You can't force it. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Dog 2. But Little Master Ling also said that Lord Jinka's true power can only be unleashed with a scabbard. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Why aren't you saying woof anymore, Brother Dog? Dog 2. F***K woof. I've been a dog for so long, and I still think it's more comfortable to say gua. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. Finding a scabbard for Jinka wasn't something Wang Ling had done on a whim, but had been planning for a long time. He had planned to take advantage of his free time during the summer break to get this done. No matter how custom-made or remodeled a sword scabbard was, it definitely wouldn't be as good as the original. Fatty Luo had custom-made the scabbard using Amateus wood as the main material, but these scabbards could only be used as spare tires at most. What Wang Ling wanted to find for Jinka now was Jinka's original scabbard. As everyone knew, Jinka was a peachwood sword that Father Wang had bought at the flower and bird market for 998 HNY. It was just that Jinka hadn't awakened at that time. Jinka's origin had always been a mystery. Wang Ling had quietly investigated a lot of clues over the years, but could only roughly confirm that Jinka was the Lord of Sword Spirits, while he knew very little about Jinka's origin. Even those sword spirits who called Jinka Lord Sword Master didn't know why they had to prostrate themselves before Jinka. According to the testimony of the sword spirit of evil sword god's heaven-cleaving sword, evil sword god's fear at the time had been completely subconscious, like a knee-jerk reaction. When he had sensed Jinka's formidable power, the words Lord Sword Master had slipped out of his mouth for no reason at all. Thus, for those sword spirits, it was like an ordinary citizen of a kingdom kneeling in salute to the king. Everything had seemed so natural. At that moment, Wang Ling was using Book of Sage Immortal to flip through some information. It was information from 10 years ago. Father Wang couldn't even remember when he had bought Jinka back then. He didn't even have the receipt, and could only remember a rough outline. Thus, Wang Ling could only use Book of Sage Immortal to search for information on Father Wang's visit to the flower and bird market. He wanted to investigate the origin of this flower and bird market, as well as the stall owner who had sold Jinka back then. He would start from the source and help Jinka find his scabbard. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.